Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the NXTGEN Racing GT3 Championship Season 2, as brought to you on the sim racing platform known only as iRacing on PC. And welcome to round number 6 of the 12-round calendar that has got our drivers buzzing, and indeed many individuals within the audience. Many of you are buzzing about this series, which seems to only get more and more intense with each and every round. Now tonight, of course, we are focusing on what is the Apex Racing Academy lobby. Named that way because it's sponsored by Apex Racing Academy, and it forms lobby 1 of our 2 lobbies who are conducting the racing over the course of Season 2, and we will be looking at our 3 classes of drivers tonight. That's our pros, our pro-ams, and our ams, as we take a look back at how they performed in round number 6 at the circuit de 24 Hours de Mons, the French endurance circuit. We're not bringing you this race live, of course, due to the fact that both the lobby 2 and the lobby 1 race occurred as of last night, and we can only bring one live, but we'll be bringing you all the action as it occurred, and we'll be bringing you with that full live experience as if it were live, of course, because as your commentator, I do not know what's happened. I do not know who the winners are, so this is completely new to me, and well, for many of you, it'll be completely new as well. And speaking to your commentator, my name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and tonight's broadcast is being brought to you by 3 media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, the NXTGEN Racing YouTube channel, that's NXTGEN Racing on youtube.com. Alternatively, you can check out the Facebook group, that is NXTGEN Racing on Facebook group, so facebook.com/groups/NXTGEN Racing. Or last but not least, if you are Twitch inclined, you can always tune in via my personal Twitch channel, which is TX141 on Twitch. Now, in regards to our schedule, you can see it there, because this is round number 6. It is the first of our 2 super endurance rounds, where we have a single 2-hour endurance race, a massive length feature race, where it's all about the strategy and also the outright pace. 120 minutes to settle who will be the winner come the end of it. There's no qualifying. We'll come into all the rules and regulations very shortly, but what it does mean is that double points are up for offer with regards to finishing positions. I don't think for fastest lap, but double points are up on offer, and this is a critical race. Now, more so because we are going into the Christmas break after this round, and we will have a 2-week break before we return for round number 7. So it's all about that championship momentum. Now, talking about momentum, some of our perhaps less experienced drivers may be getting some momentum by working with Apex Racing Academy in order to look at how they can improve their driving skills. And let's introduce our primary sponsor for this lobby. So who are Apex Racing Academy, or ARA, I hear you ask? Well, Apex Racing Academy is not just a setup shop. They're dedicated to making you better at iRacing, with services, access to drivers and features not found in other driving schools and academies. Working with them will see you connecting with pros like never before. You can learn how to prepare for a race, build setups, improve lap times, and understand how to use telemetry tools such as VRS. Every week they host multiple sessions where members can join the coaches and take advantage of group coaching sessions, and in partnership with SDK Gaming, all the data provided will be automatically synchronized directly to your PC. There's no need to go hunting for setup, replay or ghost files, because the data is right there when you turn the simulator on. Interested? Then why not sign up today at apexracingac.com. That website again, apexracingac.com. And of course, we are very grateful to Apex Racing Academy continuing their sponsorship with us from Season 1 and supporting and being the primary sponsor for Lobby 1 and contributing to the major prize pool available to our Lobby 1 drivers. And of course, prizes up for grabs for our championship winners, and I believe our top place drivers win each of the championships, but also in terms of the driver who's considered to be the most improved over the course of the season, the most consistent driver, also the drivers with the best livery and the best overtake of the season. Plenty of prizes to play for, and indeed Apex Racing Academy being at the forefront of coaching drivers and providing support to drivers, and also supporting us with our prize pool and running this series. Now, talking about our drivers, let's come on to the championship standings after 5 rounds going into the end of the first half, and we begin with the Pro Championship. And as we can see, after round 5 at the Hungaroring, Matt Caruana continues to lead on 187 points, now with an advantage of 29 points over Billy Fletcher, with Caruana having the better day at the office at the Hungaroring compared to Billy Fletcher. Indeed, Fletcher falling backwards, it would seem, into a 4-way battle for a P2 in the Pro Championship with Håkon Grebstad, Tom Edmunds and Elliot Harper reeling him in at a rapid rate. But do not count out the likes of Reece Cowell, Jason Landry and Tom Mell there from P6 to P8, all within arm's reach of a potential placement in the top 5, and they just need one good round to move all the way into that top 5. And then we have Håkon Grebstad and Mark Fletcher. Again, two drivers who are continuing to build momentum, particularly Mark Fletcher last time out the Hungaroring, who with his form saw himself jump up to 95 points and is now hunting down Håkon Grebstad and Tom Mell going into tonight's round. Outside of the top 10 in the pros is the case only a further 2 points down, and building and continuing that trend is Luke McKeown, where his pace at the moment is proving to be incredibly strong, and indeed his nerve and his drive to try and win each and every race, whether it be the sprint or the feature or take pole position in qualifying, is shown, because whilst he joined this series later than most, he is continuing that wave of momentum now up to 93 points with pole position in qualifying and the win in the sprint race and also fastest lap in the feature race. However, do not count out the likes of Deegan Fairclough, Robert Dasunik, James Holman or Tom Dadswell there, completed our top 15 for the pros, and also Kenny Heremans, Anders Vries Ankersen, Callum Brandt, Daniel Blomqvist and Tony Verschaff completing our 20 pro drives. And indeed, Tony Verschaff right now, whilst he's down 37 points, you can imagine if he does return to the series in the near future, he will come out all guns blasting. But as we look from our pros, we then go to our pro-ams, and as we can see here in the Pro-Am Championship, the picture is a little bit different, with Callum Regarton still leading on 216 points. However, the advantage he could have given himself going into tonight's round was cut somewhat with the non-finish in the feature race at the Hungaroring. He still leads, however, by a margin of 58 points, a sizable margin which will keep him safe tonight, whether he ends up not finishing this race and Edward Lack was to win at Le Mans. But of course, Edward Lack will take each and every step as it comes, and right now is the case the CXR Project Black driver on 158 points, having a good day at the Hungaroring and moving himself into that firm P2 position, with Jean-Louis Deschamps continuing his resilient fight in the Porsche 911 and showing that car can give all it's got, and Jakob Boshoff and Daniel Holmer completing the top 5 there. And you can see in the run from what is P5 down to P10, we've got a very close pursuit of the top 4 with Daniel Holmer, Matthew Hodges, Anthony Beck, Paul King, Jeremy DeBova and Phil McDougall all within a region of 17 points between one another. And it is the case that right now those 6 drivers all are looking to take on Jakob Boshoff. Will they be able to, or will it be the case that the top 4 continue to make the break? But do not count out outside of the top 10 in the Pro-Am class, with Ben Hicks looking to also get into the top 10. He's only a small margin away, and Lucas Romano even 1 point off of Ben Hicks. Dirt Bouts a further point off. You can see the trend here. The Pro-Am class very close outside of the top 4, and indeed all of our drivers are looking to try and gain an advantage here at Le Mans, with Stephen Norman and Andrew Lovesley completing our top 15, and then Didi Verlaming, James Slate, Hacken Schott, Peter Lemkins and Colin Martin completing our 20 Pro-Am drivers in the standings. We then come on to the AM class, and the story in the AM class is quite similar, albeit we do not have a runaway leader, and that's because with a non-finish in the feature race at the Hungaroring, championship leader Matt Emmons has now seen his advantage cut drastically. Now only 13 points ahead of main rival Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, and Rasmussen having a good day at the office at the Hungaroring, not the best day he could have asked for, but continuing to mount that momentum. But watch out for P3 man, you can see that the German continuing to show very good form and increasing form now on 163 points and getting closer to the top 2 with each and every race. Kurt Van Hoenacker and Stefan Tim Koopmans, both drivers having a good day at the Hungaroring, particularly Stefan Tim Koopmans, who came alive despite the emotional circumstances, as we talked about in his post-race interview. And it is the case right now that Koopmans continue to build that momentum, and with 6 points between himself and Arjen Kregel in P6, it's the case that Koopmans will be firing tonight and looking to bridge the gap between what is P5 and P4 and continue to move. In fact, in joint points with P4, Kurt Van Hoenacker bridging the gap ready to P3. Matthew Addy there, do not count him out, nor Milton S. Hoostus, Alexander Batat or George Bland, and we can see that our top 10 being chased quite fervorously by our remaining drivers in the AM class there outside of the top 10, with Navarro de Bova still only a couple of points off of getting into the top 10. He's trying to make the break. Will he be able to get into the top 10 tonight? Gus Franken not able to take part of the Hungaroring, dropping down the order considerably, but do not count him out, of course. And Ronald Van Utrecht getting a good set of points on the board at the Hungaroring and able to get ahead of Arjan Bakker, Peter Kupiers and Peter Dombrecht, who complete our AM Championship. Now, as for the team standings, or the Constructors' Championship, depending on how you want to word it, and this is, of course, across both lobbies and across all classes, we can see that going into round number 6, LuxSim24 with M&V Esports is currently leading by a margin of 11 points over the racing team Astra Team. It is the case that these two teams are starting to break away from the chasing pack, with RD Sim Sport, Switchback Motorsport, and Altitude Esports there, all giving that pursuit for the top 2, but it is the case that right now RD Sim Sport leading the charge, and we can see outside of the top 5, do not count out CXR Project Black, nor nor Next Gen Blue, nor Apex with M&V Esports, and nor Ignium Sparkle Team Tetrouge. All of these teams all getting major points on the board, and it seems to come and go in terms of whether they're in the top 5 or just outside the top 5 each and every week, and that shows you how close the team championship is. And whilst we can say our top 2 have started to make that significant break, and really RTA having a breakthrough round at the Hungaroring, it's one of those situations where at any moment one set of drop results by a team could see this team championship completely turn upside down. And that is echoed when we look from P11 to P20, with Machange B2 only 3 points ahead of TGC Racing and a further 2 points ahead of Ignium Motorsport, who on 272 points are equal with Next Gen Orange but ahead on countback. Delta Motorsport there in P15, a further what is 21 points off of Next Gen Orange, and Ignium Blaze giving their pursuit along with RD Simsport 2. Bright Esports having a difficult day, but having a better day at the office, it could be said, at the Hungaroring, and SVPMR and Machange B1 rounding off our top 20. And then outside of the top 20 in the team stands, we can see Team Racing Netherlands Blue leading ahead of Ignium Motorsport Phoenix, Team Racing Netherlands Red, Team Racing Netherlands Orange, and then last but not least, DDR there completing our championship order. Now, as for our track tonight, we are at the Circuit de 24 Heures du Mans in the Pays de Loire region of France. The Western French region is the host today, and of course the venerable endurance circuit, known and immortalised throughout the racing years, whether it be through the real-world racing of old age, alternatively in movies such as Ford vs Ferrari or Le Mans 66, depending on what region you watched it in. This circuit with 33 corners is a complete challenge for our drivers, as seen by the circuit map here provided to us by Sim Racing Wiki. There is no aspect of a car that is not tested at the French circuit, and as we now look to our reference lap here provided to us by Matt Edmunds, who's taken us around this time in the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo, we're going to see exactly what it's all about. So as he makes his way across the timeline to go onto his lap, he charges first up towards turn number 2. But before he does that, he has to go flat out through the Dunlop curve here as he goes into the extended right-hander, and as he makes his way through the corner completely flat out, only lifting as he's about to go into the braking zone, straight line braking into the Dunlop chicane. Making his way on through here, a little bit of drift of the rear end there, coming in a bit too hot, but you can see how easy it is to overstep the mark as he makes his way through, down through 4 now, and into 5. Flat out through turn number 5, and then into 6, 7, the medium speed chicane here that precedes Tetra Rouge. And as he makes his way through, coming down the gears to 3rd gear, then gradually full throttle up to full, and now charging down towards Tetra Rouge corner at turn number 8 here. It's about braking and lifting into the corner as soon as he hits that apex, stamping down the throttle and avoiding running wide at the exit there, not to get a slowdown penalty, as otherwise, if you don't get it right, you end up losing speed going onto the Mulsanne Straight. Now, in the old version of this circuit, of course, the Mulsanne Straight was just one long continuous straight, which saw cars, particularly in the old GT1 class of the 90s, hitting up to speeds of approximately 230 to 240 mile an hour, but that's why the Mulsanne chicanes were introduced, because those cars were taking flight at such speeds. But we can see now as Edmunds makes his way into the first of the 2 chicanes, braking all the way down the gearbox to 3rd gear, trail braking in to the left-hand apex that makes the core part of the chicane, and from 2nd gear he now accelerates all the way back up to top gear on the run of the 2nd part of the Mulsanne Straight here. This 2nd part being the shortest of the 3 parts of the straight, albeit it wouldn't feel like it. It feels as though the straight goes on forever, and then you're suddenly surprised by this heavy braking zone. But it is the case right now. Edmunds will be looking out for his braking marker on the right hand side for the 2nd chicane. He'll be the 100 metre board, or just after, as he makes his way on down, heading up to what is almost 282 kilometres an hour on the speedo there as he comes all the way down, in fact 279, and as he makes his way down to 3rd gear, another trail brake into 3rd, and then down to 2nd as he clears the 2nd of the chicanes. Now it's a case about getting back on the throttle as soon as possible and accelerating down towards Mulsanne Corner. Mulsanne Corner being preceded by a right-hand king, where essentially our drivers have to cut across the apex of the king and then straight line brake across it into Mulsanne Corner. One of the slowest corners on the circuit, and we see Matt Edmunds right now staying over to the left-hand side. He's going to try and straight line turn number 14 to get himself set up nicely for braking into 15 as he comes on down here, coming all the way down through the gears to 2nd gear, and immediately as he clears the apex, in fact downshifting on apex to 1st gear to get extra rotation, and now accelerating once again in the long run down towards Indianapolis. Another straight, you say indeed, but this one has 2 right-hand kings here which are completely flat out. Now, of course, that means with such long straights, we are expecting slipstream battles. We are expecting the concept of fuel saving to be applied as well, where drivers will tuck in behind, go in front, and use them to pull them along and do some fuel saving. But we can see Matt Edmunds here charging all the way down to what is Indianapolis corner, very tricky corner. The right hand here, where you break down a gear to 5th gear, you lift off the throttle, but keep some throttle in to stabilise the rear of the car. Now coming all the way down into Indianapolis corner, breaking down to 2nd gear and accelerating now into Arnage, the slowest corner on the circuit, coming all the way down the gearbox to 1st gear. A deceptive right-hander with a very high apex curve. Don't want to hit it too hard. Edmunds getting it just right and accelerating out the corner, using the width of the corner, just missing the tyre barrier there. And indeed, we did see some drivers make a update with the wall last time out in what was at the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing lobby last night. We hope not to see that in Apex Racing Academy lobby tonight. And that's the long charge up towards the Porsche curves here. The sweeping sequence of corners. Trail braking into the first right-hander. He comes down to 5th gear here, keeping it nice and tight and building up the throttle as he hits the apex and as he makes his way on through now. Staying in 5th gear, flat on the throttle as he heads into left-hander. Now lifting out here and getting ready to snap down shift to 4th gear as he goes into the right-hander. Into the Corvette curves now, the right into left. And this left-hander, such a tricky corner. You need to get it right on the power and make sure you keep 2 wheels within the white lines. He just about does it, does Evans, as he now makes his way in the run down towards the forward chicanes. 4 corners to go, 2 chicanes, very tricky chicanes here. The first one being a medium speed chicane, which is all about trail braking into the opening apex and then tapping the throttle, going down the 3rd gear. Now braking again for the slower apex, coming all the way down to 1st gear, and as he goes drifts a little bit wide, but still a good lap by Edmunds and a good demonstration of what is to come here at Le Mans. Now, with regards to our rules tonight, you can see that our drivers shall be running the iRacing low downforce fixed setup for tonight's race. And in general, as we mentioned earlier, this is a super endurance round, which means there is no qualifying session or sprint race. There's only one event tonight. It is the feature race, which will be getting underway with in approximately 2 minutes' time. Double points will be rewarded as a result, and we believe this excludes the fastest lap. As for the feature race itself, we can see some rule changes there in red, but we'll go through the rules once again for you all. The grid shall be set by reverse Drivers' Championship order based on the championship standings after the previous round. So our championship leaders in each class will be at the back of their respective packs because we will be organising the grid by driver class, with the pros starting ahead of the Pro-Ams and the Pro-Ams starting ahead of the Ams. And all drivers are required to start the race in single file. Due to how tight and twisty it is in the run through the forward chicanes, we are not permitting our drivers to start the race side by side. No double file rolling start, it is a single file rolling start, and drivers are only permitted to overtake once they have passed the start finish line, and we only go at the start finish line as well. And classes shall start approximately 2 seconds apart, which means the pros will start the race, and then the Pro-Am leader will be starting 2 seconds behind the pros, and it will be the case that the Am leader will be required to do the same. Our driver's starting fuel load shall be restricted to 70% for the start of this race, and that means our drivers are forced to take on fuel in this race. And there are 2 mandatory pit stops which require our drivers not only to take on fuel, but this time they must change all 4 tyres at least once. Now, we will see some drivers change all 4 tyres in one pit stop, but they can decide to split the tyre changes once. They could change the fronts in pit stop 1 and change the rears in pit stop 2. There is that strategic variety, and each driver will have 2 fast repairs available because this is a longer race. Compared to our normal hour-long feature race, this is a 2-hour feature race, so it's only fair we give them 2 fast repairs. And of course, we have the drive-through penalty rule. If our driver accumulates 25 instant points or more, they will be subject to a drive-through penalty. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is our rules covered, and I believe we are now good to go for the race as we look back to our live cameras here, and indeed the grid, and now getting set to go racing as we clear our screen of our race information, and as our drivers now get ready to line up on the grid. We can see everybody lining up. Let's take you through that grid order for what is round number 6. So we can see, well, in fact, that grid order not accurate there, ladies and gentlemen, because the classes should not be intermixed. So instead, we will have to bring you that grid order once our drivers do pull off from their starting lines. So it's unfortunate we do have that glitch with the replay we're taking a look back at, but we just will clear that out of the way for you, and we will get ready to go racing. But indeed, here at the Le Mans circuit, it is going to be a very tricky circuit to conquer, and all of our drivers will be looking to do their utmost. But what you can see right now, it is the case that in terms of drivers starting up towards the front, it will be Tony Verschaft who starts on pole position for the pro class here. He'll be leading the field away effectively, taking us away from the front of the field, and well, we look forward to seeing how he gets on. Returning tonight is the Dutchman for Team Racing Netherlands. It's good to see him coming back, of course. We have missed him as he gets ready to go racing, and we briefly check in with you guys and girls in the chat. And we can see there we've got what is Elwin Sykes. They're saying, let's go in the Facebook chat. Indeed, let's go racing, Elwin Sykes. It's good to see you here. And that gridding process is complete as we there get the confirmation of our grid on. We see Anders Ankersen alongside Tony Verschaft as they pull off the line here. Anders meets Ankersen. But I do believe it should be Verschaft who is our leader across the line, unless I'm very much mistaken. Meanwhile, in the Pro-Am class, it will be Peter Lemkins who takes the Pro-Am class away. You can see here parked up as Hackenschott has decided to go a bit earlier than most. I believe Hackenschott will be told he needs to bring the car in because of the fact that, well, he should be with his Pro-Am colleagues. And meanwhile, further back, we can see it's the case that George Bland here, starting off our AM drivers, being our lowest placed man in the AM Championship. Although, in fact, it's Navarro de Bova. My apologies. Navarro de Bova will be the one to lead us away there now that we think about it. So it's the case that we're going to have 41 drivers taken to the circuit today. And as our drivers all get ready to go racing here, we start off, of course, with our pros as they look to get set set for 2 hours of racing here at Le Mans. And indeed, this circuit, a very tricky one, and one which I think is going to see a lot of momentum gained and a lot of momentum lost by certain drivers in their respective championship campaigns. As we do just take a look back down the order here, and you can see how the AM pack really clustering up towards the back here. They're giving themselves plenty of space from the rest of the field, and it's what we love to see from the AMs, of course, backing themselves up right into a nice corner here to give themselves plenty of space to go racing. And I think the situation with our Pro-Ams has also been rectified, as we can see that Håkon has now fallen back into order here. I think Shot just a little bit eager to go racing, the Bright Esports driver. We can forgive him for that. Everybody wants to go racing. Everybody is eager. And well, talking about eager of going racing right now, starting at the back of the Pro class, Matt Caruana, the Apex Tech Racing driver. What can he do to bring himself through the field and try to take the win here? And also keep an eye on Billy Fletcher just in front of him. But meanwhile, as we look from them back towards the front, it is now time for Tony Verschaft to take us away. We'll be going, of course, at the start-finish line, and it will be Verschaft who leads us away for 2 hours of racing here at Le Mans. I think it's the case that Verschaft may have gone a little bit earlier than planned there, and as a result, as he crosses the line, we do go racing, and Anders Ankersen being caught out there by the jump as they make their way down the start-finish straight towards turns 1 and 2, and you can see a bit further in the background already, a bit of battle starting to build, and I do believe that is Elliot Harper versus Willis James Holman, unless I'm very much mistaken. In fact, that's Stephen Fairclough just ahead as they make their way into the braking zone here for turn number 2, and you see Luke McKeown immediately going on the offensive there and getting a move done very early on versus Holman, literally coming out of nowhere as they make their way down. Meanwhile, in the Pro-Am class, as they all make their way through, we've got a driver off there. I think that's DDD Verlaming having to take to the runoff area on the apex of turn number 3. And then in what is the AM class, we can see it's the case of mad scramble to turn 1. Navarro Demova gets it wrong at the very start, taking to the grass there on the run into turn 2. And we can see Alexander Batak getting ahead of Matthew Addy, and right now tucked in, well, he tucked in behind what is, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken there, that is one of our... Well, I think that, well, that's not Callum Reed-Garton, surely, but that is one of our Pro-Am drivers who has fallen all the way down, as we can see them lose in the rear of the car there. I think that is Peter Lemkins, unless I'm very much mistaken, as our drivers continue to make their way on round, and as they come roaring on through onto the Mulsanne Straight here, we look back up towards our leaders, the Pro class here, as they make their way on through, and in terms of those slipstream battles starting to kick, oh, goodness me, and that's Stephen Fairclough getting it horrifically wrong, and into the wall there on the exit of the first of the Mulsanne Chicanes. He rejoins, and you can see everybody navigating their way on through, as meanwhile they come roaring down the second part of the Mulsanne Straight here, and you can see now how we've already got the side-by-side between Billy Fletcher and Matt Caruana here, as Caruana is trying to find his way past Billy Fletcher in the run down towards the second chicane. Now this is not exactly critical right now, we would argue, but of course the two championship rivals, the two championship contenders at this point in time, really trying to size one up early, and it looks like Caruana's going to get the advantage here. He's going to put it on the inside and get the job done as they make their way through what is the second of the chicanes, and it might be an early move, but is it a critical one? We'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, further down, I'm hearing that Matthew Hodges has lost a couple of places here, the CXR Project Black driver. He's now tucked in behind what is Jeremy DeBover there as the Pro-Am driver makes his way on through the second chicane, and you see Jeremy DeBover here trying to get 2 places the price of 1. I think he still thinks the Christmas specials are on as they make their way down towards the Mulsanne corner, and you can see it's the case that Andrew Lovesey tucking back in behind. Now, based on what we saw in the Coach Dave Academy lobby last night, we saw that some drivers had to go for a third pit stop due to fuel concerns. Will we see a lot of drivers go for third stops again today, or will we see a lot more fuel saving? We'll have to wait and see, but you can see how it's the case that Lovesey trying to go round the outside to inside. He couldn't quite get it done. He couldn't quite get it on cutback either, so he tucks in behind. As meanwhile we look a little bit further up, and Billy Fletcher, well, he's dropped quite a way back of the order right now. I think Billy Fletcher has been passed by a number of drivers. I'm trying to see if he's had an off. He hasn't had an off according to our time screens, but Billy Fletcher going quite slowly here and falling over the back of the Pro class as they make their way down towards what is, Indianapolis corner. Meanwhile, Peter Lemkins, well, in all of this kicking off, we can see that Peter Lemkins right now very far up the order and making an early charge. And the driver you saw earlier, by the way, I do apologise, the Pro-Am driver who we thought was Lemkins dropping down, that was James Slates, who's currently listed on our timing screens as a lap down. I think he started from the pit lane, so that's not entirely accurate. I'm not sure what's happened there, but still, confusion all aside as we hear that Andrew Lovesey has had a moment on the circuit. Now, what has happened to Andrew Lovesey? He's jumped to the pit. I think he's had an off on our huge corner. But as our drives come roaring on down right now, we can see it's the case that Peter Lemkins finds himself trying to break away from the Pro-Ams. He's in amongst the pros. And meanwhile, a bit further up, we've got Reese Carroll here, the Drive Dead Racing driver, Team DDR in short. I always want to, for some reason, say Drop Dead Racing, but I know it's Drive Dead Racing. That's why I say DDR rather than the full name if I can't remember it, because I don't want to insult the Britishman. We're very proud of his team as he makes his way all the way through down towards where's the Ford Chicanes right now, running in a comfortable P8 as it currently stands as they make their way into the Ford Chicanes. The first time in anger, of course, in this race, and going through to complete the opening lap. So after one lap, it is Tony Verschaft leading in the Pro class ahead of Anders Ankerson and Kenny Heremans in P3, followed by Tom Dadswell and Luke McKeown completing the top 5 in the pros. And you can see there, that is Heremans having a slowdown penalty for track limits, and it is the case with Heremans having to back off the RP Motorsports Experts driver right now. Well, that is a disaster early on because he will lose momentum, and that will open the door for Robert de Sunic to close up very rapidly as they go through the Dunlop chicane. James Holman just behind, Reese Carroll in P8, Tom Edmunds P9, and then Matt Caruana already up to P10 in class as he makes his way rolling on, and Heremans having another cut there and backing the car off massively as we can see Håkon Grebstad and also what is Øystein Herford just ahead of him making their way on through the two Ignium Motorsport drivers. Meanwhile, in the Pro-Am class, we've got Peter Lemkins leading right now by a sizable margin over Håkan Schott here. The Swede having a good start to his race, the Bright Esport driver. Then we've got Dirt Bounce in P3, followed by Lucas Romano here in P4. Romano keeping it nice and tight as we see Ben Hicks trying to close up behind. Then it's Jeremy DeBover in P6 in the Pro-Ams, followed by Callum Reed Garton here. Garton making his way through the field very rapidly in the BMW M4 as he makes his way onto the Mulsanne straight. And then we've got Jakob Boschoff in P8, Jean-Louis Deschamps in P9, and Anthony Beck in P10. As you can see, DDD Vlayman there trying to get close enough to look for a move, and he's got the momentum here as Vlayman. He's had a very good run out of Tetra Rouge corner. He's going early here, and with the Audi power, there's no reason why he shouldn't. That V10 versus the BMW as they make the way down towards the first of the chicanes here. Now, will we see an attempt from what is Beck coming back at him? Well, I would say that right now, probably not from the Briton. Instead, he'll tuck him behind, but we can see behind him, you've got Matthew Hodges here looking for a move. I don't think Hodges wants to wait around, but he will have to wait. Meanwhile, in the AM class, Alexander Pataka ahead of Matthew Addy in the battle for the lead of the AM class. It's George Bland in P3, followed by Arjan Kregor in P4, Kurt Van Hoenack in P5. Then we've got Stefan Gamble Rasmussen, Matt Edmunds battling side by side here with Stefan Tim Koopmans, and do not count Koopmans out here in the fact that he has been showing a huge turn of form recently, and the Dutchman is literally coming right now at the championship leader in the AM class with reckless abandon and saying, you know what, I've got a point to prove, and that is that I want this just as much as you, as they make their way down. But Koopmans, I think, with a slow down there as he's having to back off completely and tuck in behind as they make their way down towards the second chicane. You can see Van Hoenacker versus Gamble Rasmussen. Van Hoenacker on the inside, Rasmussen on the outside as they go into the left-hand corner. It looks to our right here, and as they make their way in, you can see Van Hoenacker not able to outbrake the Switchback Motorsport machine as they make their way through the corner and now down towards the final part of Mulsanne. But as they make their way down, you can see that right now things are intensifying across all three classes, but we're in the early stages of this race. We should expect this early on and for things to calm down a little bit later on. Now, speaking of things intensifying, you can see that Luke McKeown already up into P2 within the Pro class. He's got past Dadswell, and now he's going to hunt down Verschaft a bit further back. We can see de Sunic trying to find a way Miles James Holman, but I tell you what has changed, where it's the case that Reese Carroll up into P7 as he looks at a move here versus de Sunic into what is Arnage. He's going on the inside here. It's Lamborghini versus Lamborghini, and as they merge from the corner, here's the case that right now Reese Carroll alongside, but I wonder how long this side-by-side moment's going to go on for here as they go roaring down to what is the Porsche curves here. But you can see Reese Carroll backing out and Tom Edmunds tucking in very closely as we ride on board here with the third of the Lamborghini drivers, and you can see it's a case, it's the Orange Army with the RD Simsport pink and black machine tucked in behind as they make their way on through the corner. Now as they come through, as I hear Alexander Pataka's had a major moment out on the circuit, and as well it's the case that right now no changes here. But what has happened to Alexander Pataka, I hear you ask? Well, Batak, oh goodness me, I think Batak's got it very, very wrong at Indianapolis. We can't quite bring you the replay of what's happened, but he's got it wrong, and he's gone from up towards the front of what was the AM Championship pack towards the bottom of it. In fact, he's at the very bottom of it right now, as meanwhile we look back up towards the battle, and we can see Robert de Sunic here battling with what is Reese Carroll. He's had to lift off there. I think he's had a slowdown coming out the Corvette curves, and as a result, Reese Carroll and Tom Edmunds gaining places. But look at Matt Caruana now all over the back of Robert de Sunic as they they come out of the final corner here and go on to another lap. They go across that timing line, and Caruana already looking for the move on the inside. He's going to have it here as Desunix having to even burn off more time, and look who's trying to follow Caruana through. It's Håkon Grebstad here, and it is the case that a Norwegian driver from Ignium Motorsport building as much momentum as he can, and we know there is no love lost between Caruana and Grebstad. These two have literally been elbows out with one another and involved in more instances. I've got fingers on my hands, I can tell you, in the opening 5 rounds, and I think that right now Grebstad trying to chase after the championship leader here, and the McLaren driver, the sole McLaren within his class, indeed the sole McLaren I believe in the entirety of this field. Well, he is trying to prove a point, which is the MP412C can sing and dance, much like all the other cars as he makes his way through Tetra Rouge. But we look from him right now back down to Håkon Herford here, who in P12 in the Pro class, all over the back of Deegan Fairclough. Fairclough really just dropping away in this race. Now, of course, it could be the case he's dropping away, not just because perhaps he's had bad laps, but also he might be doing some fuel saving compared to everybody else. But we'll have to wait and see right now, because the pace from Fairclough is not in line with the pace that we're seeing from other drivers. But as they make their way down towards the down towards the first of the chicanes, not the second chicane, they're not quite there yet. You can see Håkon Herford just backing off for the time being. But meanwhile, Jason Landry, well, he's being swarmed by Billy Fletcher and also Mark Fletcher. The two Fletchers here, not related, I should point out. Now Sam will causing Landry to be in the sandwich as they make their way down to the second part of Mulsanne. And now here's the critical part, of course, as they make their way down for this portion. Will we see Billy Fletcher try to cut his way on through, or will he just be patient here, effectively in the double toe of Landry and Mark Fletcher as they make their way down? You can see Landry here already pulling over to the side as we transition the camera further back, and I think he's trying to give the space for the two Audi drivers to just come on through here. And you see Billy Fletcher taking that opportunity. I mean, the Delta Motorsport driver here from Canada not wanting to fight this early on in the race. He would rather save the fuel and play it smart. We'll have to wait and see whether that is the right game as they make the way on through. Meanwhile, further down the order in the Pro-Am class, we can see that right now Jean-Louis Deschamps, well, he's trying to come through the field, but in fact he's having a number of drivers come roaring on through. And oh goodness me, is that Beck trying to go through very late on the brakes? And I think Beck there was trying to be a bit cheeky and say, well, given the fact that you've let a couple of cars through, Deschamps, do you mind letting me through as well? And I think Deschamps in the end decided, well, if you're going to try and come through, you're going to take us both out of the race, because there, I think that came from very far back from Beck, but they both managed to navigate it sensibly, and I think both of them showing great racing respect as they make their way down towards the Mulsanne corner. But already you can see Deschamps in the Porsche not having that straight line speed, but instead I think Deschamps might be doing as much fuel saving as he can as Matthew Hodges comes through on the inside here versus Beck, and I think Beck finding himself out of position through the second chicane due to that moment with Deschamps where Kate tried to come in hot, and as a result he's lost some momentum and instead finds himself now down towards the back, indeed at the back of the active Pro-Am field within this pack. But as they make their way on through, we're not counting out, of course, James Slates is all the way down in P36, the Pro-Am driver trying to recover this race. We've had the retirement of Andrew Lovesley, I'm sorry to tell you. Andrew Lovesley was retired early on due to damage to the car that was sustained earlier on in the race, and as a result he will not be returning to the field, and that is very unfortunate to have a retirement within the opening 10 minutes, but it does happen, and we wish him well as the racing continues here. But meanwhile, as we look from our Pro-Ams down towards our AMs right now, it is the case that looking at AM drives here, we've got side by side between Kurt Van Harnacker and Matt Edmunds here as Edmunds tries to gain the position as they make their way down into Indianapolis. Now will Edmunds be brave here? He's going to go all the way in, and he's decided to gamble, and he's made it work here as Van Harnacker now has Navarro Dabova behind him here. Another McChange B machine as they make their way down, and it is the case that McChange B two drivers could do some teamwork here, do some fuel saving, some mutual fuel saving, which you can do when there's two of you. You just simply swap places on the straights in mutual agreement, and as they make their way on through, I wonder whether the team principal will be on the radio to tell them that's what they need to do now in order to bring this race back to life for them later on. But as they make their way down towards the Porsche curves a bit further up the order, I can tell you that right now we've got Hackenschott who's fallen a little bit back, as we can see there in front of him is Lucas Romano. But now, meanwhile, all the way up in the lead and making a breakaway, well, he's blistering away right now, is the Logitech G Autos Esports driver here of Luke McKeown, who's just set the fastest lap of the race. And my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, that fastest lap is a free 53.01. To give you an idea of how fast that is, the second fastest lap that we've currently seen is a free 54.8. He right now is lapping almost 2 seconds a lap faster than anyone else. But of course, there may be some slipstream involved, but let's not count out the fact McKeown, a very fast driver when he's on point. But meanwhile, looking at other fast drivers who are trying to be on point right now, Reese Carroll trying to find a way past Tom Edmunds here as they make their way into Tetra Rouge. No change between the two of them though at this point, and again I think we will see a little bit of back and forth and argy-bargy as they make their way down the Mulsanne straight. Well, we do love to see that back and forth slipstream. It's all very tactical, of course. It's like playing chess effectively, where you've got to make the right pass at the right time and save that fuel and not lose time to the pack in front. And the slipstream so critical, and I heard that from a number of drivers down in the paddock going into this race. It's just how critical the slipstream would be to the strategy, whereby if you lose the slipstream, you're going to be committed to essentially burning a lot of fuel. But at the time, of course, I didn't realise that would mean a free stop. I thought it would be the case that the drivers would be critical on fuel over the course of each stop. But now, in actuality, that means that drivers who are out of slipstream will be finding themselves in a free-stopper race rather than a two-stop. And the pit time loss here at Le Mans, a long pit time loss. It is not a case that you want that third stop unless you are absolutely flying. And speaking of flying, Matthew Hodge is now trying to find his way into what is P11 here. More, yep, indeed, P10, my apologies, in the Pro-Am class. He passes Jean-Louis Deschamps there, but Deschamps, again, not fighting this too hard. And I do think the Dell Motorsport driver just backing things off as dirt bounce there. We just saw at the bottom of the camera deciding to run a little bit wide there, coming out of the Mulsanne chicane. I think the car was just understeering wide, and as a result, he had to let the steering wheel go and let the car roll with it. But further back, we can see that Matt Edmunds here tucked in behind what is Arjen Kregel, as Kregel now holds on versus the Luxem 24 with MV Esports driver as they come on through the first chicane once again. Now Edmunds continuing to scythe his way up the order right now, making a fast charge here. And right now P5, the leader of the AM class is Matthew Addy. Whereas Addy, I hear you ask, he's just going under our camera, and we can see him here, the SVPMR driver, now ahead of George Bland, with Alexander Batak, of course, dropping down towards the back of this field, given the mistake in the instant he had at what was Indianapolis corner, as we are seeing Matthew Addy right now leading the AMPAC through the second of the Mulsanne chicanes. But as he makes his way on through, we check over you guys and girls in the chat. And we can see there, no messages at this point in time. But do feel free to let me know who you're cheering on or who you're rooting for and what your predictions are. And of course, if you did participate in this race and you know the results, perhaps not tell us the results there, because it may be a bit of a spoiler for those who have, well, it's the case those who have not seen it or know the outcome. But focusing back on the outcomes right now, we can see that Addy continuing to build that advantage. As meanwhile, Kenny Harriman's here, where you can see the RP Motorsports Experts driver here, after having a good start, starting quite a way up the order in the Pro Class, has dropped all the way down into P10 through slowdowns, and I think just making some brief errors here and there. But of course, we know one thing about Kenny Harriman's, a very strong driver. He digs very deep, he doesn't give up, and we can imagine he will come back a bit later on. As meanwhile, further up the road, we can see here Anders Vries Ankerson in the exchange with his teammate here as Tom Edmunds takes P4 in the Pro Class, and I think that was an arranged move, and they did it just in time because Ankerson had to shut the door in the end versus Reece Carroll, who was coming up very quick behind. And it's the case the RC Sim Photography driver also for what is Drive Dead Racing really will be frustrated as he's losing out on the Lamborghini Huracan that he's been chasing for so long. As we look back from the gearbox here of the Dane as he makes his way now in towards the braking zone for the first of the two forward chicanes. Now Ankerson at this point, of course, I think his objective is to run at a good pace, but also to try and hold the Lamborghini behind him up here in order to give Edmunds a bit of breathing room. As you can see, Reece Carroll literally so close, almost taking the rear camera out on the back of the Dane's car as he makes his way across the timeline, and Reece Carroll lapping, setting his fastest lap of 55.168 as they make their way up towards Dunlop chicane. And as they come on through, we can see Reece Carroll looking for that move. He's probing left, right and centre. He's trying to get Ankerson to go defensive and cost himself time. Look at behind, and there's a reason why for this, because Matt Caruana right now is coming on even stronger as they make their way over the ridge and down into turn 5. And as they come on through and into Tetra Ridge chicane, it is the case they make their way through the left-hander, and as they do, well, no change at the moment as we hear that Callum Reed-Garton has now got into the lead of the primes. He's just past Peter Lemkins going through the Dunlop chicane, but Lemkins coming back here into the downhill right-hander, and Lemkins not giving this one up without a fight. But as they go side by side into the braking zone for turn number 6, we can see Garton goes a bit deep and he bounces on the curbs there, and he almost goes a little bit wide, but he keeps it together in the end. He had to lift off, and you see Lemkins very close right now, and I do think that right now it's an opportunity if Lemkins has now the X out of Tetra Rouge to try and close up to the back of the BMW. The BMW, the fastest car on the straights in this class, but we do know these GT3s how strong they become when they've got the slipstream down the straights, and Lemkins right now very far back, and I think it may be the case that Lemkins doing some fuel saving here and deciding, you know what, I'm not going to try and hunt this one down, I'd rather save the fuel and get a good result here. And the Belgian, of course, very happy with his performance, taking the win in the feature race last time out the Hungaroring. We've got an absolutely solid drive, and he'll be looking, perhaps he won't get the win today, but right now if things were to finish as they are, I think he wouldn't say no to a P2 as he chases down Callum Reed-Garton here and continues to follow the championship leader in the Pro-Am class as they make their way roaring down the straight. But now as we've moved beyond the opening 15 minutes, the number of overtakes we are seeing, as hold on a second, I was going to talk about overtakes. Jaco Boschov, oh, what's happened to Jaco Boschov there? Well, I can definitely tell you his livery hasn't loaded because there seems to be an issue with the livery, which is unfortunate. We'll have to get that fixed for next time, but it's the case that the South African driver there having a difficult day at the Mulsanne chicane, the first of the chicanes, and impacting with the wall, as I think there's been a bit of contact there in the, what is the AM class, a bit further back, and I think that was Jochen Siga involved in an incident with another driver, as we can see that Håkon Siga, well, he's gone into the gravel there, but I think there was more than just him going off, and Navarro de Bova as well has had a moment by the looks of things and had to stop the car. We saw that briefly in the rear of the picture. We saw at least 3 drivers coming together, but it's Håkon Siga and Navarro de Bova who have lost out massively through all of that. And right now, as they try to build themselves back up to speed, my goodness, how this race can turn upside down with just a single moment and talking about things that are turning around, we can see that Tom Edmunds now hunting down Tony Verschaft. He's just made the straight line pass on what is Tom Dadswell for P3 in the Pro class. And he's continuing that pursuit as they make their way down towards Arnage Corner. Now as they come on through, you can see behind how close the Pro class still is. And it's the case from P7 all the way down to what is P10. Our drive separated by only 1.5 seconds, as we see both Caruana in the rear of your picture and also Anders Ankersen there, both taking a little trip beyond the exit curve. They're almost losing it into the wall and using those full track limits. And Kenny Herriman's here now building back up from where he lost out earlier on. He's come from P10 back up to P7 already. And Herriman's now starting to get the ignition in place and trying to make a move, as we see a bit of contact there from what was Herriman's versus Ankersen. Ankersen just turning in very slightly on the bounce into the Porsche curves there. Don't think it was intentional. I think it was just the case the car became a little bit, oh goodness me, and Herriman's losing the car there on the apex. Oh my goodness, and that was very close for Mark Fletcher. I think just gave a light tap to Herriman's, and how that could have been an absolute nightmare moment. And Mark Fletcher there getting away with contact. Well, you can see he's got damage on the car, and in fact Fletcher loses it there through the corner as they make the way on through. And right, well, this is an absolute disaster for the Altitude Esports driver, who fortunately the pit lane is only about half a mile up the road, and as they make the way along right now, Mark Fletcher I think will be trying to limp it home, but it has gone horribly wrong. And I think that after Fletcher made that contact with Herriman's, the car became unsettled. But right now with all this happening, you can see Billy Fletcher, the other Fletcher driver, making his way up another position and up into P9 in the Pro class. As we can see, it's the case he's just passed Håkon Grebstad, who I think Grebstad has had a slowdown penalty because he's dropped quite away off of the Hunter Van der Vries Ankersen as they make the way through the Dunlop chicane and onto what is lap number 6, with 20 minutes of this 2-hour race complete. They've still got another 100 minutes to go, and plenty of drama so far, and plenty more instance and drama, I'm sure, as the racing continues. And Mark Fletcher, I can see out my commentary box window, is into the pits, and that is going to be a costly pit stop, and I think we'll force him now on to a free stop. As meanwhile, looking from our pros down towards our primes right now, we can tell you that things have started to space out a little bit, albeit they spaced out towards the front of the prime class, but where they're not spacing out is in the battle for the midfield in the prime class. And we can see it's the case that Håkon Schott right now, who's in P7, and to be fair to P6 in the prime class, and to be fair to him, running a very consistent race. Nobody can take anything from him. The Swede putting in a good job, but he has got the hunting pack of wolves in the form of DDD Verlaming, in the form of Dirt Bounce, Jean-Louis Deschamps, also Anthony Becker, Matthew Hodges, all there in the rear of the picture, all trying to close up. And meanwhile, well, we saw earlier Peter Lemkins falling back off of Callum Reed-Garton. In fact, he's just made a pass into the first of the Mulsanne chicanes. I think it is the case that right now Lemkins enjoying this opportunity to do a little bit of back and forth toe management with what is Callum Reed-Garton. Indeed, it's the case these two will be trying to slipstream off of one another and do some fuel saving, but also continue to build a lead over the chasing Pro and Pack. And speaking of the chasing Pro Am drivers here, we can see Ben Hicks here looking for the move on Kenny Herriman's, and the Ignium Motorsport Blaze driver right now really pushing to the limit. He can see there's an opportunity to win here, and it would mean so much to Ben Hicks, indeed the Ignium Motorsport Blaze team, if they could take a win in the Prime Class. They would love that opportunity. And at a place like Le Mans, it would mean a lot, as we see that is Peter Lemkins, who's had a spin at the Mulsanne chicane, the second of the chicanes, and Lemkins, who was doing so well to stay within a hunt down Callum Reed-Garton, has got it wrong and is now rejoining, but at a much lower speed than the rest of the drivers around. And this is going to see him drop all the way down into that midfield battle. And you can see the snake train here, which he's got to try and find his way back into behind what is Håkon Schott as they make the way down towards Mulsanne Corner. And now we can see that Lemkins having to let Romano on through. Well, not Romano, my apologies, Bounce on through. Romano's ahead of this pack. And meanwhile, looking at Håkon Schott, he's got DDD Blaming over the back of him, but Blaming backing off there and not going for the move as they make the way through Mulsanne Corner and on the run down towards Indianapolis now as they come on through for what is the sixth time of asking. As they make their way down, we meanwhile look back to what is the AM class, and we can see that our leader George Bland right now haven't got past Matthew Addy. I think Addy may have just simply been caught up by George Bland, and in the slipstream they've changed places, but it does look as though that right now Matthew Addy continuing to run as close as he possibly can and just trying to keep that pressure on the Englishman. And George Bland right now I think will be celebrating that feeling of being in the leader of the race. We know he wants to be the leader of every possible race he can be in right now. Winning means so much to the MV Esports driver, but as we can see them make their way down towards what is the run into Indianapolis, I think Addy will have something else to say about that as they come through, but nothing this time. We'll have to wait and see on the next set of overtaking opportunities as they make their way on through. We're hearing that Kenny Harrimans has had another brief off around on the circuit, but nothing major as right now our drivers coming through our large drivers. We're looking at, of course, where the field's spaced out somewhat. And meanwhile, a bit further back in the AM class, I can tell you that Kurt Van Hoornacker right now trying to build that pressure on Matt Edmunds here in the battle for P4 in the AM class. But Edmunds, I think, just gradually starting to open that gap out. He's starting to inch it open. And if he can do so, he'll be hunting down Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, who is 6 seconds up the road as they make their way down towards the Porsche curves once again. And as they come roaring on down, we look towards our leaders and the elite class indeed. And that's Luke McKeown right now, who are leading by 8.08 seconds over Tom Edmunds there, who decides to do a little bit of a shortcut route there across the apex of turn number 2, and I think he's going to have to be very careful about that, because if he continues to do that, I think he may be subject to what is penalty. Indeed, he's got a slowdown ready. You can see he's had to take that slowdown in the run into turn number 6, and Edmunds there having let Tom Dadswell through, and Dadswell will be no stranger to being in P2. We saw that at the Hungaroring as he makes his way on around. He runs a little bit wide out of Tetra Rouge. Is it enough to warrant a slowdown? We'll have to wait and see, but Dadswell right now, well, he will want to try and hold on to this position. It will mean a lot to Altitude Esports for them to have a drive finish on the pro podium here as they come roaring down to the Mulsanne Straight once again, but behind in P4 on his return to the series, of course, after a break from the opening rounds. We can see that Team Racing Netherlands is Tony Verschaft, the Dutchman, currently in P4 and hunting it down Edmunds and Dadswell in front. The two Toms ahead of him, and he'll want to take them off one by one as he looks to gain and get closer to the drivers. Oh, goodness me, and is that Dadswell into the wall? That's Dadswell getting it very wrong, coming through the opening chicane down Mulsanne, and he's into the wall. He'll get that car back out onto track. But that is an impact, not too heavy an impact. We're not seeing too much damage to the car, but I definitely think that's going to be damaging his spirits right now, and he'll need to try and repair those as well as any damage to the car when he does make his pit stop. But is it enough to, to force him to pit early? That will be the question. As they make the way on down, we do look further down our order, and we can see that in the Pro-Am class right now it is the case that midfield battle has now opened up a bit. We can see that our drivers have spaced out to a degree, and it is the case that Dirt Bounce ahead of Matthew Hodges right now as they make the way down into the first of the Mulsanne chicanes here. And a little bit further back we can see it's the situation whereby we have got Jean-Louis Deschamps being hounded by Jaco Boschov as they make their way through what is the opening Mulsanne chicane and now head down towards the second of the chicanes. Further back out, we can see that George Bland is ahead of Håkon Schott, and it does look as though the leader of the M class here enjoying the pace he's deploying right now as they make the way on down. As they come roaring down the straight, it is the case that no change between these two at this point in time, but we can see how the situation is developing as we see just a bit further up the road Matthew Hodges finding his way past Dirt Bounce and up into P20 overall. That's P6 in the Pro-Am class as they make the way on through, and then meanwhile further up the road once again it is the case that Jason Landry here hunting down what is Tom Dadswell, and well, Dadswell of course with that major error through the first Mulsanne chicane now find himself in the battle for the midfield of the Pro class, and this is not what he would have wanted as they make their way in towards Indianapolis. Now will the Canadian go for the move early, or will he wait? I think he's going to wait this time. He's not going to try and seize the opportunity, being smart here, I think playing the long game as they make their way on through the left-hander. But looking from them, we look a bit further down towards our AMs here, and it is the case that Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen has just found his way past round the outside of Matthew Addy under braking into Mulsanne corner as we ride on board with Matthew Addy as he charges down towards Indianapolis. Will we see a return move from him here? I don't think we are going to. I think he's going to be quite far back, although we will see as they come roaring along. No short shift in from Addy. He wants to be as close as possible to the Switchback Motorsport Ferrari ahead of him, and as they build up towards Indianapolis right now, he's getting closer and closer. Is it going to be enough? I don't think so at this point in time as they come into the braking zone. But Addy very conscious, I think, of the fact that he cannot let Rasmussen go, because the next driver to come up behind him will be Van Hoornacker. And as they make the way down towards what is the Arnage corner right now, as Luke McKeown sets the new fastest lap of the race, a 3:52.755. My goodness, that is an absolutely staggering lap compared to the laps we've seen so far. Addy losing out there out of Arnage, and falling backwards from Gamble Rasmussen. But as we look back to the exterior cameras right now, you can see it's the case that George Bland here letting Håkon shot through. Well, now it's the case that Bland has not got any protection from another class driver. Instead, he's got Gamble Rasmussen, who is inching closer and closer here as they make their way through the Porsche curves. Now, as they come on through, it looks as though there's going to be no, goodness me, an Addy tapping the wall there. Well, I say tapping, and in fact, that's damaged the rear right axle. You can see that car just coming loose, and Matthew Addy's race, I think, has gone from what was looking good to bad to a nightmare. And now, as he's parked up on the grass there, will that be a return to the pit? I think he's going to try and limp it home because he's not far from the pit lane, given the length of this circuit. But right now, Addy with a disastrous moment, and that promotes a good number of our AM drivers up the order. Well, speaking of AM drivers being promoted up the order, Matt Evans, who did fall down to P6 for a time, is now building back up once again and trying to hunt down Tim Koopmans, as we hear Peter Lemkins is into the pit. And Will Lemkins having that moment earlier on in the race. I don't think he needed to pit for repairs, but right now I can tell you one driver who is making repairs to what was perhaps a bit of a difficult start to the race is Rhys Carroll, who's made his way past what is Tony Verschaft here and up into P3 in the pros. And the Drive Dead Racing driver here building a lot of momentum as they make their way out of the Mulsanne chicane and down towards the second of the Mulsanne chicanes. Now, as they make their way down, you can see Tom Edmunds there, 2.6 seconds up the road. Now, for what is Rhys Carroll at this point, he is going to have what is a very fast charging BMW M4 of Tony Verschaft, and Verschaft will leave it no quarter as they make their way down towards the second chicane. And look at Caruana in the back of your picture. He's trying to figure out who does he want to put it behind. Does he put it behind the BMW or does he put it behind the Lamborghini in front of him? And in the end, he decides to stay behind Rhys Carroll as they make their way through the second chicane here. And I think Caruana might be sizing up a double overtake as he gets the better run of the three coming out of the chicane. Now, has he got enough momentum to do it? No, he tucks back in immediately here, but you could see what he's trying to do. He's trying to find a way to get them both done immediately. In fact, giving a little tap there to the back of Rhys Carroll, I think, or he's that close he could reach out and tap the back of Rhys Carroll's car as he makes his way on through here. But this is very bold stuff from Caruana, trying to sipe his way between the drivers. He's got one done. Now, can he get past Rhys Carroll as they make the way down towards Indianapolis? I think if he can, it's going to be a staggering move at this point in the race as we come towards the end of the first quarter, as we complete the opening 30 minutes of the 2 hours, 90 minutes to go. And right now, our championship leader in the pro class is trying to sipe his way onto the podium in the pro class with two more drivers ahead of him as they make their way down. You can see, look how close he is. He's literally right there tapping the rear bumper of Rhys Carroll right now, pushing him along. And as they make their way on through Indianapolis, he backs off, of course, because to tap Rhys Carroll there, I think we'd see them both in an instant. And Matt Caruana heading to the stewards. And Tom Edmunds with an off there. And it's the case that Edmunds, who was looking relatively comfortable, has made one mistake, and that advantage of 2.8 seconds has now become an advantage of 6 tenths, not 2.8 seconds instead. And that is a disaster for Edmunds with one brief off at Indianapolis. But he's kept it together and he's still ahead. And that could be critical for him as Caruana is still behind Rhys Carroll as they make their way towards the Porsche curves. Now, as they make their way on down, meanwhile, we can see a bit further back. We've got, oh, goodness me, we've got a car spinning there just as we're about to talk. And that's Øystein Herford, the pro driver, getting it wrong at Arnage corner and almost going back on himself. And as the Audi driver now rejoins, it's the case the Norwegian not having a good day at the office, but he's kept the car out of damage. And as a result, it'll be a case, it's just a bruised Spirit. It won't be a bruised car as he makes his way back up to racing speed. But we look from him to a bit further down our pro order, and we can see Jean-Louis Deschamps here all over the back of what is Jakob Boshoff as they make their way into Arnage corner. Now behind them, meanwhile, we can see that Håkon Schott has got Stefan Gamble Rasmussen over the back of him, and it is the case that our leader in the AM class putting some pressure on the Pro-Am driver here and trying to get him to get the move on. He wants to stay away from Tim Koopmans, who is 11 seconds down the road. But as we look from them to further up the order in the pro class, it's the case that Billy Fletcher right now all over the back of James Holman as they go on to what is their 9th lap. And as they make their way through, Billy Fletcher looking for the move on the inside to outside into the Dunlop chicane. You can see he's already ahead as Holman backs it off there and decides to tuck in. And as they make their way into the braking zone here, I think Fletcher's going to have no qualms about taking that position and running with it as they make their way on through the corner. Now, as they come on through, Deegan Fairclough into the pit. And hold up a second, we're hearing there's something that's happened a bit further down. And what's happened to Stefan Gamble Rasmussen, who's got damage to the car? car, and I think Håkon Shots also been involved in an incident. We've got multiple cars. There's smoke coming out of Håkon Shots' car. I think there's major damage to the engine. I think it's the case that those drivers have been involved in an incident. That BMW is absolutely smoking as he makes his way on through it. And Kenny Heremans, well, Kenny Heremans has been involved in some sort of incident, but I don't think he's been involved in that incident. I think Håkon Schott and Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen have come to blows as they're both limping home. You can see the smoke coming out of the back of that Ferrari as well. Both drivers involved in that, and I think the stewards will be taking a look at that one after the race. That is very, very unfortunate. And Gamborg Rasmussen, who had a huge advantage in the ARA class as the leader, is now coming into the pits for repairs. And George Bland is in from what was, well, it was going to be P2, but he's come on in early. Now, is this a scheduled stop? Well, it's got to be. Is this an attempt at an undercut or an early sign of a free stop from the Englishman? As right now, your leader in what is the ARA class is Kurt Van Hoenacker, who's just made his way past Tim Koopmans and is into lead. P24 overall, P1 in the ARA class, and Van Hoenacker seizing the opportunity here that change B2 with other drivers falling by the wayside. He is seizing the chance to try and take the AM lead and run with it as they make the way down towards Tetridge Corner. It would seem that that AM class lead is cursed. Nobody who gets into it stays in it for long, but can Van Hoenacker break the curse here at Le Mans? We'll have to wait and see, because whoever has been the leader has had a major incident or seen themselves drop out the lead very soon after. As you can see there in P3, we've got Matt Edmunds building up even more momentum now, and he can see the leads in sight here, and the Luxim 24 of MV Esports driver will need that momentum boost after the retirement in the feature race at the Hungaroring as he makes his way on down here. But first it's Tim Koopmans who has a chance at taking on the McChallenge driver ahead. Well, no change between these two as Tim Koopmans decides to take out the braking cone, and as they make their way through the first of the chicanes, you can see behind them you've got Deegan Fairclough, the pro driver, who will also try and navigate his way on through. As meanwhile, in a similar situation further up the road, Tony Verschaft here and Matt Caruana, and Caruana has found his way on through in the run down towards Indianapolis. Now, will we see Verschaft go all the way around the outside? If he's going to try, it's going to be bold stuff. No, he decides it's not worth it. Instead, he's going to tuck back in, but meanwhile, Rees Carroll is still behind Tom Edmunds as we see a little bit of gravel being kicked up there on the exit of Indianapolis. I think it's the case that both drivers decided just to put two wheels beyond the exit curb, and as they make the one through, no change between these two, but definitely really starting to build up right now. But whilst all this is happening, of course, they're letting race leader Luke McKeown extend his lead to 15 seconds and ever extending as they make their way down towards the Porsche curve, so much so we can't actually see McKeown in the camera shot at a distance now as they make their way in towards the very tricky right-hander here. And as they come on through, we look further back to Håkon Grebstad, who is now trying to recover his race and go after what is Anders Fies Ankersen as they make their way into the Porsche curves. And as they come on through here, you can see Grebstad looking for that potential cutback. He's trying to get Ankersen to go a bit deep. Not going to happen there as the Porsche driver keeps it together very nicely. And RD Simsport right now keeping it together there in P8 for Ankersen, P7 for Holman as they come through. As Luke McKeown comes into the pit for his opening stop in this race, and we can see as he makes his way on in right now, it's going to trigger, I think, the landslide of pit stops from a number of drivers. As Jason Landry here towards the back of the Pro Class in P11 chasing after Tom Dadswell as they make their way on through the Corvette curves, and behind them Robert de Sunik with a run wide there, and I think the Dutchman is going to be subject to a slowdown as we see our top five in the Pro Class all into the pits. And as they all come on in, it's the case, there's a long way to go in this pit lane, and Billy Fletcher and Anders Fies Ankersen also in, but Håkon Grebstad stays out, and he will go on to take the lead of this race for at least a lap right now. We will not see Luke McKeown re-emerge in the lead as Grebstad goes on, but where will we see him come out? That is the question. As Dadswan, also Jason Landry, decide to go another lap as they carry on their way around, and as they make their way on through, well, we're hearing that Callum Reed-Garton also into the pits from the prime lead, and Jeremy DeBova from P2 in the primes, and we can see the chain reaction as Ben Hicks in from P3 as well, and Oisin Hereford between the two of them. Will we see any of our primes stay out? That'll be the big question, of course, as they all make their way through. We can see Didi Verlaming there. Well, he almost had a little bit of a tap from Lucas Romano as they came close together. Dirt Bounce as well in. It is the case that the majority of our drivers coming on in, but right now in terms of the pit stops, as our drivers emerge there, it is the case that we can see Anders Fies Ankersen coming out in P4 and McKeown with a very long pit stop here, and I think McKeown is going for his long stop early. Perhaps he's putting all the fuel in the car. Perhaps he's also done the tyre change, as we see that Lucas Romano has had a jump to the pits, which will put him back a lap. And Romano, with that jump to the pits, has lost out now, and he's dropped all the way down to the bottom of the order. But after that pit stop, Luke McKeown down to P11 here, and I think the Logitech G Autos Esports driver must have a plan, and it is. He's got his long stop out of the way, and now he's going hunting. And well, if he can gain places now, I'm sure with a shorter stop later on, he will come through the order very quickly and essentially jump everyone on the strategy in every overtake he makes from this point onwards. But he's got to make overtakes now, and he's got it all to do once again. But the drivers who've benefited most from this pit window in terms of track position, as we look at the battle for P2, these two drivers, of course, Tom Dadswell at the rear of the two, and it is Jason Landry at the head of the two, as Håkon Grebstad just makes his way into the Mulsanne chicane. The second of the chicanes is the case that Matt Caruana has benefited to a degree, although he's still behind Reese Carroll here, and we see Tom Edmunds and Ankerson have really gained by comparison. The RD Simsport drivers have got themselves track position. Can they make it count? That is the big question as they come on through, and as they make their way through the sequence of corners right now. No change from anyone at this point in time. It does look as though the strategy just playing out, and we'll have to wait and see how it all comes together later on. As meanwhile in the AM class, let's not forget our AM drivers. Well, we've got Kurt Van Hoenacker, who I believe may have had a technical issue in the pits, unless I'm very much mistaken. We'll have to wait and see, but George Bland is now your AM class leader, having, well, he's made one pit stop already, and we saw Bland was the first driver to pit in the AM class, so he's gained the lead of this through strategy. Now, can he hold on to it? As meanwhile behind is Jochen Seeger, and Jochen Seeger has also made a pit stop. The German driver now coming back into this race after an off earlier on, but we believe he may be on a free stop as he makes his way down towards Tetra Rouge corner, and behind him he's got Peter Lemkins in P10 in the Pro-Am class, and Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen. Well, after that repair work done to the car and having his pit stop triggered early, it is the case that right now the Danish driver trying to get himself back up to speed and back into the lead of the AM class as he makes his way onto the Mulsanne straight. But as we look from him to further down the order, we can see Matt Evans has come out quite far back in P4 in the AM class with a longer pit stop, and Matthew Addy all the way down in P5 right now and trying to build some momentum back up and get himself back into the hunting. As he makes his way on down, it is the case that we look further up the field. We can see that Kenny Hermans has found his way past Tony Verschaff for what is P17 overall, and that's P13 in the Pro class as they make their way down towards the Mulsanne corner here. And it is the case that these two scrambling for one of the backwards places in the Pro class in terms of outside the top 10. And as they make their way down in towards the Mulsanne corner right now, I don't think we're going to see any change from the duo as they come on through. Now, as they do at this point, it is the case that I can confirm for you, ladies and gentlemen, that Kurt Van Hoenacker coming into the pits, they had technical issues with the car, and they've actually had to retire the car. And Van Hoenacker, who was leading, they've had to retire the car due to technical issues, and that's a disaster for the Belgian, who was looking very strong. But as we look from him, we can see our top three in the Pro class have finally decided to pit, and it's Håkon Grebstad, Jason Landry, and Tom Dadswell. And Dadswell all over the back of Landry here. Can he outdo him on the pit stop? Well, what this will mean, well, I'm presuming Ankerson coming on through will come on through to take the lead. Oh, well, he'll be coming through to take the lead of the class, and this will be a rare position for the Dane. He won't be used to being in the lead at the midpoint of the race in the Pro class. But of course, it's always good to see a variety of drivers up there, and it will be the case that Tom Edmunds will be right behind him. As talking about being right behind, we can see that Matt Caruana right now still right behind Reese Carroll as they make their way through the Ford chicanes here. A very, very tricky way to pass against Reese Carroll, who will not want to give this up, as we're hearing that Anthony Becker's jumped to the pits as well, which will set him back quite considerably, and he's had an impact with a wall somewhere from what we're to understand, as right now we see all our pro drivers coming on through, and Håkon Grebstad has left his pit box. He has come out ahead of Dadswell and also Landry, and where will this bring him out as we see McKeown coming on through behind Billy Fletcher. So McKeown already back up into P6, and Grebstad comes out behind McKeown as they make their way up towards the Dunlop chicane. Now I think for Grebstad this pit stop has worked out well. Dadswell has come out ahead of Jason Landry, it should be pointed out, so he's found a way on strategy to get past the Canadian, but with the Canadian having a longer stop, we believe, well, in fact he's being held in place here, and I think that actually might be the case that he may have picked up a penalty in the pits because he's spending a very long time in the pits, and I believe that is the situation. The Canadian driver right now may have been caught speeding into the pits, and as a result it's not worked out for Landry as he's now got to wait there, and that's going to see literally all the pro field come charging on through as he finally leaves the pits. But look at how much time that error, and as a result that penalty has lost him out. He's lost out a massive amount of time. He's all the way down to P14 in the Pro class right now, and that is a horrible place to be. He's now got to try and recover this race when it was looking so good. But speaking of looking so good, we can see McKeown right now, he's found his way past Billy Fletcher in the run down to the first Mulsanne chicane. Fletcher goes a bit wide there as the two Audi drivers swap places, and now it's the case that Matt Caruana finds his way past Anders Vries Ankerson, as I think Ankerson has had a penalty somewhere along the line line. Alternatively, he's just got it wrong coming out to the first chicane. And now as they make their way down towards the second chicane, it's a situation where Caruana still trying to hunt his way past Reese Carroll as they make their way into the heavy braking zone for the second chicane. You can see Reese Carroll there doing everything he can to chase down Tom Edmunds as Caruana goes a bit wider. He's got to be careful of running that wide because he may be subject to a track limits warning if he continues to use that line as they make their way down towards the Mulsanne corner right now with 42 minutes complete. We can see it is the case that right now the top four in the Pro Class, Titan ever, only separated by what is 2 seconds from P1 to P4, and we do love to see it as they make their way roaring on down into the braking zone once more, and as they come on through the... Oh goodness me, and Reese Carroll there getting it wrong, and Matt Caruana giving him a tap, and I think it was the case Caruana just didn't know how to stop the car there in terms of what to do, whether Carroll was going to roll across the circuit or in the end up staying right in his way, and I think it was he put the brakes on the end, but that brief tap has seen Carroll now got to recover his race, and Caruana putting the brakes on. As a result, has lost out to Ankerson, who's gained the place, and to be fair to Caruana, stopped the car as much as he possibly could. They go racing once again, but Reese Carroll just getting that one little mistake, and well, it is the case now that Caruana's down to P3 and Reese Carroll down to P7. The Drive Dead Racing driver, he won't have picked up too much damage, but he will know now he's got a lot more to do than previously planned as he makes his way for the second kink in the run to Indianapolis. Meanwhile, behind Deegan Fairclough, who has made a pit stop already, it is the case that Fairclough regaining that pace in this race is the privateer as he makes his way down into the braking zone for Indianapolis here and really trying to get that momentum as Dadswell's tucked in behind him, and Fairclough almost losing the car there for Indianapolis. You could see how the rear was snaking on exit, and very well done to catch that car, and I think Dadswell will now know if he can keep that pressure on the Altitude Esports driver, will have a good opportunity of gaining a move with Fairclough making a potential mistake, as behind him you can see Robert Asunik, and then we have got what is Callum Reed-Garton, who's keeping his eyes on this battle between the pro drivers as the prime driver makes his way down towards the Porsche curves here. The best part of 15 seconds clear of Jeremy DeBova, who is in P2 in the prime class right now and in a bit of a world of his own as well as he makes his way down towards the Porsche curves in his own time. But meanwhile, as he comes roaring on down, we are hearing that Navarro DeBova has had a major moment. In fact, he's gone very deep into the Mulsanne chicane. The first time he's gone through the tyres in terms of had to weave his way through the slalom there, which is intentionally as a slalom to cause our drivers to lose speed so they can't gain an advantage. But Navarro DeBova, I think he's had an instant earlier on because he's dropped all the way down to P36 overall. That's P8 in the AM class. And he's the last of our AM runners currently, with the retirements of Kurt Van Hoornacker and Arjan Kregel as they make their way down the straight once more. But as this continues, we look further up the order and we can see Jean-Louis Deschamps here just chasing down what is that potential at P7 and going to hunting after P6 in the form of Lucas Romano. But it is the case right now. Deschamps has got Ben Hicks behind him as we ride on board the gearbox here of the Delta Motorsport drivers. He tries to hold off the Ignia Motorsport Blaze machine of Ben Hicks as they make their way through the Corvette curves. Now as they come on through here, we'll see it's very telling in terms of the Porsche how much speed that Deschamps is able to carry through the corner. You can see it opens that gap up slightly as they exit the chicane. Oh, sorry, the curves I should say, and now they go into the four chicanes here. The two chicanes of course a test on braking and confidence of carrying speed, and as they make their way on through the sequence of corners coming down heavy on the brakes, you can see that Deschamps having a poor time here as Hicks is able to get closer but not enough to look at a potential move later on. So as a result they proceed as they were going on to another lap. They go on to lap number 12 here, and with 45 minutes complete it's the case only another 15 minutes before the first hour is complete, and they're at the halfway point. And you can imagine if limbs are getting tired already, they're going to be much more tired later on as time continues to wear on and our drivers make their way on through and around the circuit once more. As they come roaring on down towards what is the sequence of corners leading into Tech Rouge, going into 6 and 7 right now. You can see Hicks staying very present with the Belgian. As meanwhile, further up the order, I can tell Luke McKeown has now found his way past Matt Caruana in the slipstream battle down towards what is the second of the Mulsanne chicanes. The two drivers battling for P3 in the Pro class, and McKeown absolutely flying as he drifts a little bit there on the exit of the second chicane, and as he now makes his way down towards Mulsanne corner here, just keeping that momentum. McKeown, I think, really on course to retake that lead if all goes as planned right now, as he's looking very strong at this point in time. as they go roaring on down. Will Caruana have something to say about that as he tucks his way on into the Mulsanne corner? No way through at this point in time, and you can see Billy Fletcher behind here trying to close up to the back of that battle for P3, having found his way past Håkon Grebstad, and that is the case of Britain here doing everything he can to hunt down the podium finish in the Pro Class here at Le Mans. As meanwhile we look from him to a bit further down the order, and I can tell you that when we looked at them, it was Ben Hicks behind Jean-Louis Deschamps. Well, now it's the case that Ben Hicks is ahead of Jean-Louis Deschamps. They've traded places over the course of the slipstream battle down towards the first of the Mulsanne chicanes, and now as they come down to the second chicane, will we see the switcheroo once again? I doubt we're going to see it, to be honest, given how far back Deschamps is, and indeed they stay as they are. As they make their way through, and we're hearing that Navarro de Bova has jumped to the pits, and I think that may be a case to do repair work on the car, alternatively retire the car, given the instance that he has had. We'll have to wait and see. They've got it down in the garage right now, and they are doing work on it in terms of the pit crew doing work on the car as we currently speak. But meanwhile, we look from what is our battle for P7 in the Pro-Am class, so a bit further down the order, and we can see that our leader right now in the AM class, George Bland, the MV Esports driver, just keeping it small, keeping it short, keeping it sweet as he makes his way out of the second Mulsanne chicane here, and he needs to, because Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen is trying to close up, and right now it is the case. Rasmussen on that last lap took 1.5 seconds out of Bland and is continuing to fly as they make their way down towards what is Mulsanne corner, and behind them they've got Håkon Grebstad here, who's building that momentum as rapidly as possible as they come charging on down the straight in towards the braking zone here, and as they come on through. Indeed, that is noted there in the Ignium Motorsport in the YouTube chat about several paints missing tonight. Unfortunately, it would seem as though trading paints has glitched out, and we haven't had another opportunity to try and get it repaired. And as our drivers continue their way on down right now, we can see it's the situation where you can see it really giving it that pursuit and giving it his all as he comes roaring down the straight as they make their way down towards Indianapolis. But we look from them to further up the order, and you can see Matt Caruana continuing to chase after what is their Luke McKeown in that battle for P3. But McKeown has got the position. Can he hold it? That is the big question, of course, as they make their way through what is the Dunlop chicane once again. And as they come on through, we are hearing it's the case that Robert Dasuni into the pits from what was P10 in the Pro Class right now. Is this his second stop? If so, it's an early second stop, and that would be an indicator he's on a free stop. But meanwhile, we look from Matt Caruana here trying to hunt McKeown and losing out gradually, we reckon, and starting to fall away. We look from him to a bit further down the order, and I can tell you that right now James Holman, P16 in what is the Pro Class, trying to hunt down Mark Fletcher, and Mark Fletcher's got Jean-Louis Deschamps just ahead as they make their way roaring down towards the braking zone, and as they come in towards the Ford chicanes once again here, no change between these drivers as they make their way on through. Now as they come on through the final corner and on to another lap here, I think Holman at this point biding his time and biding his patience here to try and size up Mark Fletcher. Of course, these two battling for one of the final places in the Pro Class as they make their way around. Robert Dasuni in the pits, and he'll drop down to P16 in the Pro Class as it currently stands, as right now we see our battle for P14 in the Pro Class continue. But it looks as though no ground being gained by either driver on the other, although to be fair, Mark Fletcher getting very close now to the back of Jean-Louis Deschamps, and this could be a critical need for a pass, because if not, he may find himself being held up to a degree by Deschamps versus Holman, as Holman will try to gain now in the run down towards what is the Tetra Rouge corner as they come on through here. Fletcher will need to get past quickly because it does look as though Holman very close, and as Fletcher now looks on a move here versus Deschamps, of course changing places overall but not within class. You can see meanwhile Holman, well, he's going to slipstream his way on through here and continue that momentum in the run down towards the Mulsanne chicane number 1 as they come roaring on down the straight. We ride on board here with the Ferrari driver, and the 488 roaring as it does, coming down the straight. And will he go for the move here? If he's going to have to pull out very late. Instead, he lifts off in the end and just gradually breaks into the chicane, just backing the car off and staying as close as he possibly can for the time being as they make their way through the chicane and now onto the second part of the straight. And as they come roaring on down, we can see there in the YouTube chat, Jeremy DeBova saying, hello Paul and all the drivers from Belgium. We wish you all a happy holidays and indeed Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you, Jeremy DeBova, as we see you and the other drivers making their way around the circuit right now, and Holman backing off and losing out to a degree versus Fletcher there after the first of the Mulsanne chicanes. I think it might be the case he's got a lot more to build up to, and in fact he might be just letting Fletcher clear the Pro-Am drives and trying to bring him with him at the moment rather than trying to go for a move here, given how close they are now to the back of Ben Hicks. And I think it's the case that actually it's a situation where Holman trying to play the smart game here of just letting Fletcher clear a path as they make their way down towards Mulsanne Corner. Now you can see Fletcher already making the move here, but Hicks a bit further up the road for James Holman, and will Holman be able to get it done in time, as we do see Fletcher on the inside here into the braking zone. And as they make the way, and you can see Holman's going to look for it, he's going to go very late on the brakes, he's half in, but in the end he does not go for it, and Hicks shuts the door there. He left it open to a degree in case Holman went for it very late, but Holman in the end deciding that caution was the better part of valour as they make their way down towards Indianapolis. But we look from them to further up the order, and I can tell you that right now Deegan Fairclough closing up to the back of Rees Carroll as they make their way into the Porsche curves. Now, what has happened to Rees Carroll? He's dropped quite away off the back of what was the battle for much further up the order. Well, of course, we saw the moment earlier on with Matt Caruana, where as they were coming out to Mulsanne Corner, Rees Carroll lost the rear end of the car, and Matt Caruana gave him a tap on the rear end coming out of the apex, which sent Rees Carroll all the way around, and that dropped Rees Carroll down. But you can see now Deegan Fairclough all over the back of Rees Carroll as they make their way down towards the Ford chicanes in no change, but Rees Carroll under a lot of pressure as they come on through to complete their current lap. And as they make their way out of the final corner, you can see both Lamborghini Huracan drivers literally pushing to the limit. A flash of the lights there from Deegan Fairclough. I wonder if he's trying to distract. Alternatively, get a message for I'm not going for the move on you. We'll have to wait and see as they both make their way in to what is the Dunlop chicane here. Will we see a move from Fairclough? No, he waits. He waits the opportunity. He beats the patient hunter as they make their way out to turn 3 and over the ridge and down through 4 and 5. And as they come on down through into the corners that lead up to Tetra Rouge, it is the case that drivers who have just cleared Tetra Rouge includes our race leader in the pro class of what is Anders Ankerson. As you can see behind the RD Simsport driver now is his teammate Tom Edmunds from RD Simsport, and right now these two I think trying to work together to break away from Luke McKeown and Matt Caruana, who are working together in P3, P4, and you can see there the change of position. And this is what we talk about when two teammates work together to use the slipstream to their advantage, just trading places, not losing any time. And now as they make the way onto the second part of Mulsanne, you can imagine here it will be the case that Ankerson will try to swap places with Edmunds, and then when they go on to what is the third part of the straight, they'll swap back once again. And this, of course, presents a great opportunity whereby they can use that slipstream to pull away. And we can see, meanwhile, behind, Matt Caruana literally tapping the back of McKeown once again and literally giving him a little push along here as they make them through. Very, very tricky to do this right, because one tap too much and it will be the case that he will send the car in front of him flying round. But as they make the way on through right now, it is the case that Caruana are able to find a way to safely push the Audi in front of him along. Of course, both cars powered by the same Audi V10 engine but tuned differently, and it is the case that McKeown right now does not have the tow, Caruana does, and so McKeown is really acting as the spearhead through the air in front of him as they make the way down towards Mulsanne Corner. And Billy Fletcher trying to give that pursuit as a bit further back. We can see that Rees Carroll here still ahead of Deegan Fairclough as they can make their way down towards Mulsanne Corner. As they come on through, it is a situation right now, I think Deegan Fairclough just staying there and trying to work with the drivers. Hold up a second, I'm hearing that Matt Edmunds has just retired from the race, and our championship leader in the AM class, he has retired, and as a result of that, he will not be gaining major points here. And with that effect, he opens up an opportunity for our AM Driver Championship to change hands in terms of the lead. And the two men who will be looking to take that lead will be firstly Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, currently P2 in the M class and looking very strong, and also Stefan Tim Koopmans here as they make the way on through, with the fact that we also lost another driver earlier on. Well, in fact, we didn't lose him per se, but we saw him drop down the order, and that was Alexander Batat, but he's recovering to P5 so far. It could be the case that we are going to see a new AM Championship leader come the end of round number 6, but who is it going to be? And I'm hearing with regards to the BMW M4 of Edmunds, they had technical issues with the car and they had to box it, and the BMW M4 running out of reliability, and that is disastrous. As meanwhile, it is the case a bit further up the road. We're hearing that Lucas Romano has had a visit to the tyre barrier there at the second of the Mulsanne chicanes, and that car, the RP Motorsports Juniors Ferrari, very heavily mangled. I think that's going to be a car that's going to have to venture to the pits, but he's got a long way to go and he does not want to jump to the pits. That will put him a lap down, and on a 4-minute lap that will take forever to clear, as we see George Bland right now taking the lead of the AM class and taking it as far as he possibly can, with Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen only 4 seconds back and watching on. But meanwhile, in the battle for what is second place in the pro class, we can see Anders Vries Ankerson into the pits as Luke McKeown and Matt Caruana follow on through. And as they make their way through right now, I'm expecting that's our second scheduled stop for Ankerson. He's come in for a second time. And, well, now it's going to be the case about who's going to go for the second stop early and really signal themselves for a third stop, and who's going to be taking that second stop later and signaling themselves onto a two-stop strategy. We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out, of course, as McKeown right now has only got one more driver between him and regaining the lead of this race after his long pit stop earlier on, and that is Tom Edmunds, who is only 1.1 seconds up the road. Meanwhile, further down in the Procast, we can see that Deegan Faircow once again all over the back of Reese Carroll as they make their way through the Dunlop chicane. No change between these two at this point in time as they make their way on through, but they are continuing to push all the way around the circuit right now and keeping that momentum as much as humanly possible as they make their way through the sequence of corners. But as they make their way around right now, we can see it's the case that Deegan Faircow just keeping that pressure on as much as he possibly can as they go into Tetra Rouge corner. But right now I think it's going to be one of those situations where Reese Carroll will be preparing to see the Lamborghini behind him get alongside him and look to do the change in terms of change of places. Now, will they work together or will they fight for P6? That's the big question here as they make their way towards the end of the opening hour of this race. Of course, they'll come to the end of it by the end of this lap. They go down towards the first of the Mulsanne chicanes, and you can see Fairclough looking all over the back of Reese Carroll as Carroll puts the car in the middle of the road. They snake to the racing line here. I think Fairclough does not want to pass. He would rather stay tucked in behind and do some fuel saving as they make their way through the opening chicane and now onto the second part of the straight as they come roaring on down. Meanwhile, a bit further up the road, I can tell you that Tom Edmunds has been reeled in by Luke McKeown and Matt Caruana. They are now in a freeway slipstream train as they make their way through the second of the Mulsanne chicanes, and as they come on through this time, it's a gap of only 5/10 of a second, and it continues to close. Luke McKeown is literally unstoppable right now, it would seem, as they make their way down towards the Mulsanne corner, and as they head on down at this point, it's a long run. I think McKeown won't be going for a move from this far back surely, but he will be starting to size up that opportunity to try and go for the move down into Indianapolis and then make the breakaway. Because after Indianapolis, whilst there is the long run from Arnage corner up towards the Porsche curves, it's nowhere near as long as the straights that we just come down and what we're on right now. And it will be the case that if he can make the break for the Porsche and the Corvette curves, he will go on to lead this race by a margin which I do not think will be wielding on the next lap via the slipstream on the straights, but we'll wait to see as Tom Edmunds right now puts the car on the natural racing line and McKeown on the inside, and as they come through here, Edmunds is going to stay on that outside line in the run to Indianapolis. We can see Caruana, they're swerving there to the inside with Edmunds coming across. Caruana goes to the move, it's side by side down into Indianapolis corner, and Edmunds defends it. He's not going to give this one up without a fight versus Caruana as they make their way into the braking zone for Arnage. It was very close there, but in the end Edmunds holding onto the position as we ride on board with Matt Caruana, who now goes hunting after P2 again, but this time it's Tom Edmunds in P2, not Luke McKeown. And will we see McKeown make the breakaway, or will Edmunds come back at him as well? We'll have to wait and see as they make their way down towards the Porsche curve. So we ride on board with the Apex Tech racing machine of Matt Caruana in P3, the Briton, as they make their way into the opening sequence of this corners. And as they make their way through the first part, they go into the second corner here, and it's all about that commitment, holding as much speed as possible. And I can only imagine how tricky this becomes in the dirty air of two cars in front as they make their way now through the Corvette curves here. The switch to left hand is such a critical corner. All three drivers, they're pushing it to the absolute limit, all on the racing edge as they make their way through. Excuse me, and you can see it's the case that Tom Edmunds getting a slowdown, and McKeown as well, and Matt Caruana takes the lead of this race as they make their way through the Ford chicanes. It was the case that McKeown and Edmunds pushed it too far, and Matt Caruana did not. He just about kept it within limits, and that is what happens when a slowdown penalty is applied, and you just push a bit too much on those track limits as Caruana now takes the lead. McKeown behind him, and Tom Edmunds needs to try and find his way back into this as soon as possible, because if Caruana and McKeown can break away as a pair, Tom Edmunds will be left in no man's land as we complete the opening hour of this 2-hour endurance event. And Caruana goes very deep into her Dunlop chicane. They're locking up under braking and understeering into turn 2. And as they make their way down towards what is turn 6 and 7 right now, we can see it's the case the Apex Tech racing driver feeling that pressure from Luke McKeown as they make their way in towards Tetra Rouge corner, and Tom Edmunds all over the back of the pair of them as they make their way through the right-hander, and as they all get it right. We think Edmunds just about kept within the limits there. We'll have to wait and see. And they now go onto the straight, and it is the case all three drivers still with one another as they go roaring down onto another lap here, and you can see it's already side by side for Caruana versus McKeown as they come down towards the first of the chicanes. They make their way in towards the braking zone as we can see a car fading in and out of existence at the rear of our picture, and I believe Billy Fletcher just behind as they make their way down towards the braking zone here. And as they come on in to the braking zone, McKeown makes his way past Caruana there. Caruana relenting the position, but meanwhile I'm hearing further down Gamborg Rasmussen has had an off somewhere, and as a result, in fact, I think he's had an off running into the Porsche curves, and it is the case that right now George Bland now has a lead of 11.4 seconds over Gamborg Rasmussen. So it's the case the Dane has pushed it too hard in the hunt for the lead of the AM class, and as a result George Bland will now have a sizable advantage, but anything can happen of course with an hour to go. But Gamborg Rasmussen has fallen victim to Le Mans as he makes his way, well, I thought he was going to go into the pits there, he's going to soldier on, but that offers cost him dearly as he makes his way on through the Ford chicanes. But as he comes on through the corners, it is still the case that Deegan Fairclough is behind Reese Carroll. No change between these two as we check in with you guys and girls in the chat, and no further word at this time. But, well, it's the case that right now I think you're watching in dead silence and focusing on the racing as we are as well, as our drivers make their way on through. And having cleared an hour, we look back up towards our leaders and give you a recap of the situation after an hour of racing. So right now, leading the Pro class by a margin of 0.2 of a second, but it's oscillating depending on the slipstream battle, is Luke McKeown ahead of Matt Caruana and Tom Edmunds. You can see all three of them here in the run down towards Indianapolis. It's the case that these three drivers all battling back and forth on the slipstream, as we see Caruana tucked in very tight behind McKeown as they make their way down towards Indianapolis. McKeown coming from the midfield of the pros in terms of his starting position, making his way into the lead, and he's had the longest opening pit stop of any of our pros. We believe he's doing the reverse strategy, whereby he's taken his long pit stop early and then decided, and that's most likely with the tyre change, and he'll have shorter pit stops from this point onwards. Behind him is Caruana, who is keeping that pressure on, our championship leader in the Pro class, of course, having come from the back of the Pro class into the P2 position, and Tom Edmunds, the RD Sim Sport driver, who right now really pushing on, trying to get one of his season best performances in. Billy Fletcher in P4, and then we've got Håkon Grebstad in P5. Grebstad having a moment earlier in the race, which saw him drop down to a degree. Reese Carroll in P6 with Deegan Fairclough just behind him and harassing him relentlessly here. And it's the case the Drive Dead Racing driver, who was running up towards the podium of the Pro class, had a moment at Mulsanne, which was antagonised with contact from Matt Caruana, and it's seen him drop down the order and now makes his way around in P6 and trying to get himself back into the top 5, hunting down Håkon Grebstad. But he's got to watch out for Deegan Fairclough, who's made his way back up into P7 after a major moment early on in the race. And it's the case that Deegan Fairclough doing a splendid recovery drive right now in P7. Tom Dadswell in P8 here, continuing to push on, the Altitude Esports driver, with a mistake earlier on as well, costing him significant time. Oistein Hereford in P9, and then it is Tony Verschaft in P10, completing the top 10 of our Pro class. Meanwhile, in the primes, it's Callum Reed-Garton who is leading by a sizable margin here. A margin of what is the equivalent, if we do some quick math, of what is about 25 seconds over Jeremy Debova. And Callum Reed-Garton has gone from the back of the Pro-Am class up towards the lead, and he's never let it go since then. He is running this race to his pace. Jeremy Debova, in a similar fashion, has found himself all the way up into P2, the McChange B1 driver, and putting in a very consistent performance right now is the Belgian as he soldiers on through the corners and keeping it together as best he possibly can. And then we have Matthew Hodges in P3. Right now, the CXR Project Black driver coming on from one of his season best performances. He's still got a way to go, of course, but keeping it smart and keeping it simple, with DDD Valamic not too far behind and hunting down that final podium position in the Pro-Am class. And then we've got Jakob Boshoff in P5 here. The Ignium Motorsport Spark driver with a livery that hasn't loaded, unfortunately. It is the case of South African driver putting in a good performance as well, hunting down the top 5 in the championship, as meanwhile Ben Hicks in P6 in a battle with Jean-Louis Deschamps just behind, as Deschamps has got Ankerson, who's come out the pits quite recently from his second pit stop in the Pro class, and Deschamps right now continuing to hunt down Ben Hicks. And we do reckon that Deschamps may be on a 2-stop because his pace has not been with the rest of the Pro-Ams, but he's been running a very consistent race. He's made no mistakes whatsoever, and Deschamps really running a very consistent race. We'll have to wait and see what the Delta Motorsport driver surprises us with on the strategy, whether it is a 2-stop or whether that Porsche just does not have the speed around here. Peter Lemkins in P8, and then we have Dirt Bounce in P9. Dirt Bounce, who started off strong, dropped down the order with a number of moments, and then in P10, Hackenschott, the Bright Esports driver, who again started off this race very well, but the Swede has just fallen down the order. But on top of that as well, he's had some moments which have not worked out in his favour, and that has seen him drop all the way down to P30 overall and P10 in class. And he's recently had what is, well, in fact, he's only had one pit stop so far. He does have another pit stop on the horizon. But meanwhile, as we look from him, we look a bit further further up the order. And we're hearing that Rhys Carroll has found his way past Håkon Grebstad, and it is the case that right now Dean Fairclough has found his way past a pair of them, and I think it's the case they caught up to the back of Håkon Grebstad, and then they have started to do the slipstream switch on the straight here, as we see Rhys Carroll has followed through with Fairclough, and Håkon Grebstad has fallen back to a degree. As meanwhile we talk about our AM class, and well, George Bland was leading the AM class, but it's the case that he's coming for his second stop, and it's now Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen who is our AM class leader, albeit he had a mistake only recently, which saw him drop from being 4 seconds off of George Bland to now being the best part of what is, he's 30 seconds ahead right now, but he was about 12 seconds behind when George Bland came into the pits. But Gamborg Rasmussen is your AM class leader right now, with Matt Edmunds, who we just seen reappear here, so he's not out to race. My sincere apologies, ladies and gentlemen. We thought he was out because he disappeared from our timing screens for a very long period of time. Matt Edmunds is still racing here, and he is in P2. Well, that was a little bit surprised there, but that's connectivity issues every so often. But we can see the Luxim 24 of MV Sports Driver is very much alive. He is not out this race. Bit of confusion, and he's in P2 right now. It's Stefan Tim Koopmans in P3, and soldiering on as the Team Racing Netherlands driver in P4. Alexander Batakit making his way through what is Tetra Rouge right now, the Switchback Motorsports driver, and then it is George Bland who's come out in P5 after his pit stop. Matthew Addy in P6, then Håkon Grebstad in P7 here. Håkon Grebstad having a good start to his race, but one major moment going through the first of the moles and chicanes, where I believe he came into contact with Navarro de Bova. At least that's what it looked like. We didn't quite see the full instant, but it's the case that Håkon Grebstad's race has gone down a gear since that moment, and he's now in P7 in the AM class. And then the rest of our AM drivers have retired, but it's the case in terms of retirement order. Navarro de Bova would be P8, Kurt van Hohenacker P9, and Arjen Kregel P10. And Kurt van Hohenacker we feel for most because he came into the pits in the lead of the AM class at the first round of pit stops, and they had to retire the car immediately. There were technical issues with the car, and Kurt van Hohenacker, who was on course potentially to be the winner of this race if everything played out as planned, well, it did not go to plan in the end. But speaking of things going to plan, as we complete our wrap-up of the first hour of the race, it looks as though McKeown right now, having found his way past Edmunds and Caruana, he's now making the break. He's almost a second clear, and if he can get to about 1.5 seconds as they make their way out of Tetra Rouge corner, he will be safe in the slipstream run down on the Mulsanne straight, and that's what he'll be targeting. As we see there in the YouTube chat, Ignium Motorsport JV, can anybody make the two-stopper work? It looks like only a handful of drivers made it to 10 laps on the first stint, which is needed for a two-stopper. Well, and also clarifying that Grebstad is on course for a two-stop race. What I do think is the case, and I do agree with you there, I know what I would say that based on the pace, Jean-Louis Deschamps definitely spent a lot of time out in his opening stint, and I think he is trying to fuel safe for that two-stop, and it may be the case as well. As you say, with regards to Håkon Grebstad being on target for a two-stop race, there may also be a couple more drivers trying to do it, but otherwise the majority are going for that free stop, as Deegan Fairclough into the pits here, so he's definitely, I think, committing to what is a free stop when all is said and done. But we are waiting for the next round of pit stops to really come to full life right now. We've had a couple of pit stops already, but not the full set, as we look from the pit lane to our race leaders right now. Luke McKeown not making the breakaway as we ride on board and look back from the Audi ARA of McKeown. As he makes his way roaring down the second part of Mulsanne towards the second chicane, you can see Edmunds closing. And to be fair to Edmunds, he's not let this race go. Whilst he was overtaken by McKeown and Caruana, he has not given up. And you can see Caruana here looking for the move on the inside as they all come roaring on through. And into the braking zone they go. And you can see McKeown there holding firm as Caruana makes the place. And you can see Edmunds just giving the place up because they know right now there's no real point fighting, because you're fighting into a slipstream battle where there's no need to fight for those positions. As we see Matt Edmunds there dropping off our time screen briefly in return, so I think there's some connectivity issues there. I thought it was the case that Edmunds was out the race, of course, we mentioned earlier, but just keep an eye out for that. As Gamborg Rasmussen is into the pits from the lead of the AM class, and that's going to be critical versus George Bland, but we continue to look at the lead of the Pro class right now, and it's all coming together for these three once again as they make their way through Mulsanne corner, and it's going to be about who gets the better run out of the course and who can make the break. That is the real big question here. But remember, whilst McKeown is leading, it gives an opportunity for Caruana and Edmunds to fuel save behind him. And meanwhile, Billy Fletcher, well, to be fair to Billy Fletcher right now, he's not really put a foot wrong in this race. He just finds himself 6.3 seconds off of the battle for the lead, and it's a frustrating experience because the three drivers ahead of him will be fuel saving and slipstreaming, where he's got to do it all under his own momentum. He doesn't have anybody to work with. It's a lonely life in P4 for Billy Fletcher right now, but you can understand for him, as meanwhile I'm hearing that Håkon Schott has had a moment and he's got it wrong somewhere out on circuit, and he's in fact coming to the pits. I think he locked up under braking, and that's what has triggered triggered our quote-unquote our crash detection, but Håkon is coming to the pits. He's all safe and sound, I can definitely tell you. As Håkon Grebstad, meanwhile, well, the Indian Motorsport driver all over the back of Rees Carroll as they make their way into the braking zone here for Indianapolis, and as they come on through the tricky right into left, Grebstad almost losing the rear of the car there, just keeping it together about as they make their way through Arnage, but it's the case that the Norwegian really pushing on strong here behind Rees Carroll, and if he's on course for that two-stop, as you say, Indian Motorsport JV, and also Deshan's on, well, we can see there in the YouTube chat for yourself, Deshan's also on target for a two-stop race, and what I will say is Grebstad is looking very good on this two-stop right now, because if we factor in the pit stop time, which we reckon is at least what would be in the region of about 30 to 40 seconds, that would see Grebstad come out towards the front of the pro field, presuming that his pace continues as it is, and he just keeps this pace together. And of course, he's gaining right now by running behind Rees Carroll, and as we see, our leaders are all into the pits. They are all coming in right now, and well, as they make the way on in Luke McCown, also Matt Caruana, and also Edmunds as they come charging on through. And we are keeping an eye on our data right now in terms of the pit time that they're spending in the pit. We can see that all three of them coming in sequence as Billy Fletcher also Billy Fletcher in, and also Rees Carroll in. But Håkon Grebstad decides to stay out once again here, and the Norwegian deciding to throw a curveball for our leaders. They've all got to be aware right now that he is trying something different. He is not running to the same strategy as those around him, and as a result, this could be critical for the Norwegian. Could this be an opportunity to even take the win by surprise as he makes his way through the Dunlop chicane? We'll have to wait and see, as Tom Dadswell also comes through here into P2, but of course he will have the drivers behind him coming on through as we see Håkon moving out of the way. Then that's Matt Edmunds just behind right now, but meanwhile coming out of the pits, well, nobody's coming out of the pits as of yet from everyone who's pitted, as we hear that Callum Reed-Garton and also Jeremy DeBover into the pits from the Pro-Am lead as they both come on in, and Øystein Herford also into the pit lane. It is pit time for the majority of our drivers as Jason Landry comes on through here. He decides there's no need to pit right now, and I think the Delta Motorsport driver might also be trying for a sort of two-stop here if he can make it work. He's had to push very hard in the Ferrari, and if he's going to make this work, it will be impressive. We'll see him jump up quite considerably as McKeown is the first driver to come out of the pits, and remember, we expected McKeown to have a shorter stop than the others around him for the simple reason he did take longer on his first pit stop, and as he makes his way out, it's not that much of a gain, but he has gapped Tom Edmunds by the best part of what is 2.5 seconds, and also further back, well, it is the situation right now. Rees Carroll still in the pit lane as we've got even more drivers coming on through right now. This is not what Rees Carroll will have wanted, as we see that he finally makes his way out of the pits, and he's coming out behind what is, I believe, he's coming out behind Callum Reed-Garton, the Pro-Am leader, who is now down to P3 in the Pro-Am class, but more importantly, he's come out behind Billy Fletcher, who is already the best part of 4 seconds up the road from him as they make their way under racing conditions once again. But as they come on through, in the meantime, we can see just a bit further back in terms of the AM class. Well, Stefan Tim Koopmans is your AM leader right now, and he's only made one pit stop. I'm presuming he's coming in very shortly, and there he is. He is peeling in right now after following Robert de Sunic for a brief while. His teammates, of course, but it is the case the two drivers in 2 different classes and on 2 different strategies, clearly, as Koopmans is in. Now, where is George Bland? Well, Bland is making his way right now through the Porsche curves and into the Corvette curves very shortly, quite aptly named, given he is driving a Porsche, and as he makes his way on through, well, Bland, I would presume, is potentially on course here to make this work towards victory as he makes his way through at the right into left, and as he comes on through looking very smooth and dancing to the rhythm as he comes charging down towards the forward chicanes. But as he makes his way on down, Stefan Gamble Rasmussen, meanwhile making his way through the Porsche curves right now, you can see how much that one moment at the start of the Porsche curves, approximately 6 laps ago, has cost the Dane. It's cost him so dearly in all of the proceedings, and I think this may be the case. He's missed out on the chance of the win unless there is some drama further up the field, as we can see George Bland comes across the timeline to retake the lead of what is the AM class, going on to what is the remaining 45 minutes of this race. But as we look from him to a bit further up the order, I can tell you that Rees Carroll right now has found his way past Callum Reed-Garton. I think Garton in backing off in the run down towards the second chicane, as a bit further back we can see it's 3 wide there, but it is the case we've got 2 pro drivers battling around a Pro-Am driver, and the 2 pros are Tony Verschaft and also Kenny Hermans, as Verschaft goes very deep but gets the car together, but running across the apex there, He will, of course, have a compromised line right now as Kenny Heremans tries to find his way back on through. And as they make their way down the straight, the second part of the Mulsanne straight, we can see in the rearview picture DDD Verlaming versus what is Peter Lemkins here. With Lemkins defending to the inside. Verlaming trying to go around the outside, but the Machange BE1 driver not able to find the move, and Lemkins holds on there for what is for him P6 in the Pro-Am class. But then we look back up to, of course, our battle for what is P13 in the Pro class here. And we can see Tony Verschaft now holding on to that position quite firmly, with Kenny Heremans stuck behind for the time being as they now make their way down towards the Mulsanne corner. And as they come charge on through, we can see behind is the case Jeremy DeBova will just be watching this as a bit of a spectator, and Heremans having the overspeed here halfway down the straight already as he heads down towards Mulsanne corner. Well, we would presume here that Verschaft will come back at him in the run to Indianapolis. We'll wait and see as Heremans gets it nicely parked under braking, and Verschaft follows him on through the corner. And as they make their way on through, well, we can see they're both drivers getting a good exit. It's all going to come down to who's the braver on the brakes at Indianapolis. Well, speaking of braver on the brakes, we can see that Reese Carroll here, he's back up ahead of what is Deegan Fairclough, and Billy Fletcher just up the road right now as Reese Carroll has got the move done versus Fairclough. I think he got it done into our large corner and now trying to make a breakaway versus Fairclough, who's not going to let him go any time soon. We know that these two have been battling for a sizable portion of time as they make their way around. And, well, as they come on through... Oh, goodness me, that's Callum Regarton. No, that's surely not Callum Regarton. Regarton with a very, very rare error. We thought he'd ironed out those errors after the opening 2 rounds, but an error has come back to bite him when he least expected it. Now, that is going to cost him a lot of time. It's not in terms of damage to the wall or anything along those lines, or damage to his car from hitting the wall, we should really say. But Callum Regarton, I think, with a little bit of a scare, and that may now just make him reconsider how much he pushes for the rest of this race. Now, we can tell you that Ben Hicks is into the pits from P2. And as he makes his way on in, it's Jean-Louis Deschamps right now, who is your leader of the Pro-Am class, who is yet to make his second stop. But we believe he is on a 2-stop here. And if that is the case for Jean-Louis Deschamps, this is going to be a very long drive to the finish. But if he can make this work, we should see him jump well up into the top 5, if not towards the podium of the Pro-Am class, as he makes his way on through down towards Tetra Rouge. But right now it is the case. I think the limbs are starting to feel somewhere. And Callum Regarton here, definitely, I think, starting to feel that pinch of taking this race for 2 hours rather than the single hour as he makes his way out of the Dunlop chicane. But as I say, it was a small mistake in it. It didn't cost him as much as it could have, but that mistake could have been very costly if it worked out differently. And from that mistake, he lost somewhere in the region of about what was 20 seconds of race time as he makes his way now back under speed through Tetra Rouge corner. But meanwhile, where is Ben Hicks coming out of the pits? Well, we can see he's making his way out, and Matthew Hodges is coming on through. I think Hicks is just about going to stay ahead of the P5 driver in the Pro-Am class, with Matthew Hodges already having made his second stop, so it hasn't given him the jump, or has it? It's going to be very close here under braking, and Hodges is going to go for it as Hicks is going to have to defend into 3, and as they make the one through side by side, but Hodges in the end is up to speed, and I think Hicks has just not got those tyres up to temperature, and he can't be brave enough to try and close the door and exit. And I think Hicks, smart there, knowing he can't force the move, but what he can do is stay as close as possible to the CXR Project Black Ferrari ahead of him in the run out of Tetra Rouge, so that way he can come back at him down the Mulsanne straight as they make their way on through Tetra Rouge. And it is the case that whilst Hodges has opened that gap up to half a second, we expect that gap will now start to creep down as they get up to top speed. But as they make their way down the straight right now, we are seeing those second stops play out, and the drivers we've got to watch out for most now are the drivers who've yet to make their second stop, and whether by going onto a 2-stop strategy versus what seems to be the preferred strategy of a 3-stop, whether it is going to benefit them in the long run. That will be the big question right now. And our best placed 2-stopper, well, we believe he's a 2-stopper right now, is Jean-Louis Deschamps, but we do have Håkon Grebstad, Tom Dadswell and also Jason Landry all yet to make their second stop, and we've had it confirmed to us in the chat by what is Ignium Motorsport Jakob Boschop. There is the case that Håkon Grebstad is on a 2-stop, and he is our race leader in the Pro class right now, and at the pace he is going, if he could make this work, this would be a phenomenal ending to his race. Well, he's now taking that second stop, so he will drop down the order to an extent, but remember, he'll have to make no more pit stops after this one as he comes on in. And we see Tom Dadswell in as well. We would believe that this is Dadswell's final stop. And where's Jason Landry? Well, he's a bit further back, making his way through what is the Porsche curves as of now. And he's got Luke McCown hunting him down. As you can see McCown pursuing here And we're hearing that Tony Verschaft has jumped to the pits after a major off. So I think Tony Verschaft has got a problem with the car and they're going to have to try and fix that. I think, in fact, Tony Verschaft jumping to the pits and it may be a retirement for the Dutchman. We'll have to wait and see and have that confirmed. But as they make their way on through, Luke McCann right now in that P4 position. How much can he gain? Can he get himself back into the lead and then hold on to the finish, as he's already opened up the gap to Tom Edmunds to 5.5 seconds as he makes his way on through. And as they head up towards what is the forward chicanes, you can see a bit further back Anders Ankerson here also giving pursuit. Jason Landry has come into the pits, and what that will mean is that Luke McCann will come on through to retake the lead of the race at Le Mans in both the overall position standings and also in the pro class. But how long will Dadswell, Grebstad and also Landry be in the pits? This is critical because we believe all three drivers are on a 2-stop, and if that is going to prove true, then as a result Luke McCann, who we believe is on a 3-stop, will now need to put in every lap as if it's a qualifying lap as he makes his way on through. Billy Fletcher makes his way through the forward chicanes, and as he comes to the exit of that lap, we can see that Håkon Grebstad already leaving the pit lane. This is going to be close, but I think Fletcher has done enough here to get back ahead, as we see Deegan Fairclough losing the rear end on the exit of the forward chicanes. As Fletcher comes on through, Grebstad is not up to momentum, so Fletcher goes back into P4. But now for Fletcher, he's got to be cognizant of the fact that the drivers around him are on 2 stops, whereas he's most likely on a 3-stop. And you can see that as he makes his way out of the Dunlop chicane, and it's the case that Grebstad gets up to speed. Fairclough still holding off Rees Cowell for the time being as they make their way down towards turns 5, 6 and 7. And as they come roaring on through the sequence of corners, the triple header before Tetra Rouge. Fairclough pushing to the limit right now, but going deep there through 6. And that's going to put him out of line for 7 as they make their way through. Almost lose it. He's on the grass. Fairclough, he's got to try and bring the car back under control, and he does so, but that has lost him a lot of momentum, and now Rees Cowell will have an opportunity to come back at him down on the Mulsanne straight here as they make the way onto the very long straight with the 2 chicanes that break it up and provide some variety as they come all the way down towards what is the first chicane. A long way to go, and Rees Cowell tucked in behind, I think trying to do as much fuel saving as he can behind Deegan Fairclough, because these two are so evenly matched on lap time. Meanwhile, further down we can see that Matt Caruana, after his second stop where he's found his way past Dadswell, who's got a slow down there by the looks of things after going wide out of Tetra Rouge, and Caruana now continuing that charge in what is P9 in the pro class here, having made his second stop, but a long way down. I think he's changed all 4 tyres in that second stop, and that's why he's dropped down so much as he makes his way down towards the first chicane. And as he comes roaring on down, further down the order, I can tell you that in what is the AM class, things have broken open a little bit in terms of the space in between drivers. And it is George Band who is still leading ahead of Stefan Tim Koons at this point in time. And meanwhile, whilst we look from them to what is our AM drivers in terms of our statistics and standings, we are hearing that Jakob Boshoff right now, he's trying to close up to the back of DDD Belamin as they go racing down onto the Mulsanne straight. Now as they make their way down here, of course these have been quite close together for some time, and here's the case. I think the South African here, the Ignu Motorsport Spark driver, trying to find his way into P6 of the Pro-Am class, and they've only got what is Peter Lemkins, the best part of 2 seconds up the road from them. So I think there might be a bit of a tactical play here, a little bit of a mutual alliance for a brief period of time, a mutual temporary alliance for them to work together. As we see a bit of dust being kicked up there as they make their way out to the corner and then head down to the second part of the Mulsanne straight. But no change between these two at the moment, as Rees Cowell is still behind Deegan Fairclough. We're hearing up ahead. If you saw, there was a little bit of change on the timing screen. But as these drivers make their way down, we can see now Didi Blaming pull into the inside here. Is he going defensive, or is he deciding, you know what, I'm going to let Boshoff through? We'll have to wait and see. As they make their way down into the braking zone, they come on in, and it looks as though Blaming their backs off at the last possible moment, and Jakob Boshoff takes the position as they come on through. Now as they make their way through the second chicane and now down towards Mulsanne, will we see a swap between the two of them once again? We'll have to wait and find out, as meanwhile Rees Cowell in a similar fashion has found his way ahead of what is Deegan Fairclough, and he got it done down into Indianapolis. And as they make their way out of an arch now, will we see Fairclough come back into the Porsche curves? I don't think so. I think he's a bit too far back as they make the way now in towards that trail braking zone, and you can see Rees Cowell holding the position. No change between these two as they make their way into the tricky sequence of corners that comes towards the end of the lap. But to be fair to Deegan Fairclough, he is staying as close as he possibly can in the run through these corners here. He is not letting this go whatsoever, and it's amazing to see how close he can hang to the back of Carroll's car. as they come through the Corvette curves here, and as they make their way onto the exit now and the run down towards the forward chicanes. It is the case that Deegan Fairclough just not giving up this fight at all and not giving any quarter. He is staying there constantly as they make their way on through, and as they come charging on down now towards what is the forward chicanes through the first one and then into the second one. We are hearing that there's been an off circuit for Matt Edmunds, and he's just returned to the track. He's down in P7 in the AM class, what is P33 overall. But as we continue to look at the battle here between Reese Carroll and Deegan Fairclough, there's just nothing separating the two of them as they go on to what for them is now their 21st lap. They come roaring up the hill in towards the Dunlop chicane, and they are nose to tail as they have been for a considerable period of time, and they are both hunting down Håkon Grebstad, who right now is only the best part of 1.6 seconds ahead of the pair of them and will not want to get dragged into a freeway battle for P5. He will want to feel safe in that top 5 position as he makes his way up towards Tetra Rouge corner with just over half an hour of racing to go. And whilst things have calmed down a little bit right now over the majority of the field, we have to appreciate, of course, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure many of you will, is that we are going to potentially see a number of third stops for drivers, and it's the 2 stoppers who will then have to fit into that sequence of 3 stoppers, and that's where the drama and all the action will really come alive right at the end. There will be that frantic dash, that frantic dash, I should say. Frantic, I don't think it's a word, we've invented it today. Meanwhile, Reese Carroll and Deegan Fairclough, as they make their way down towards the first of the chicanes once again, they're nose to tail, no change between the two of them as they make their way into the braking zone, and Reese Carroll just holding firm for the time being as they come on through. Now as they make their way through that chicane, they are closing up to Håkon Grebstad. In fact, they've closed up to the point now that they are well within slipstream range, and I think Grebstad is going to have to get himself ready for a freeway battle for P5 as they make their way on down here. And Grebstad, well, the light is now fading in terms of that peaceful run to chase down Billy Fletcher in P4, and you can see Billy Fletcher in the foreground of the camera, as meanwhile in the background we've got the freeway train now building up as they make their way into the second chicane. And as they come on through, you can see Grebstad trying to use as much width of the road as possible to get the fastest possible run into the chicane, but I don't think that's going to be enough as they come on through, and now down towards the final part of the Molesdown straight they come. As we look from them to a bit further down the order, I can tell you that Peter Lemkins, meanwhile, in a bit of a solitary, what is P at 17 overall, P5 in class, and as he makes his way down, the RP Motorsports Juniors driver here having a quiet day at the office, it would seem, at this point in time. But just behind, we can see there we've got Jason Landry, the pro driver, trying to cut his way between the pro drivers of what is Didi Valaming and also Jakob Boschel as they make their way on through. And where it's the case that Landry's gained 1 place, but he hasn't gained both of them, as Didi Valaming now tucks in behind the pair of drivers and aims to get the double toe in the run down the second part of the Molesdown straight. Meanwhile, a bit further up the road, I can tell you that Ben Hicks, another Ignium Motorsport driver here, Ignium Motorsport Blazes driver, makes his way in behind Matthew Hodges through the second of the Molesdown chicanes, and as they come on through this time, as we're hearing that Håkon Grebstad has just lost 2 places, and I think it's the case that Grebstad has been passed by both what is Deegan Fairclough and Reese Carroll as they made their way into Indianapolis, where it's the case the Norwegian driver completely backed it off. He did not want to fight it, and as a result now he's going to watch eagerly here as Grebstad, if he's on that 2 stop as we believe he is and we've been informed he is, it is the case that Grebstad will want to fuel save here. He will not want to battle whatsoever, and I think he would rather fuel save and then let these guys run away with the race rather than stay with them. As we see, we've got a car up in front, and that's James Slates, who's had a major moment going into the Porsche curves, and as Grebstad comes on through right now, this is looking very good for Grebstad to at least come home towards the podium. He is putting in a solid effort, and the pace is very, very strong as he makes his way on through behind Fairclough and Carroll as they come up towards the Corvette curves, and as they make their way on through right now, it is the case a bit further down the road, Matt Caruana all over the back of what is a Mark Fletcher as they come through the sequence, of course, the Porsche curves and then into the Corvette curves, and as they make their way on through, you can just see how close Caruana needs to run to the back of that Audi to gain that advantage as Ankerson is into the pits once again, and as he comes on in, the Porsche driver into the pit lane, that is the signal. I think that might be the trigger pulled for what is our 3rd round of stops, or is it? Because Ankerson right now, who was quite a way up the order, in fact I think that might be his, well, it is his 3rd pit stop. It's confirmed it is Ankerson's 3rd pit stop. Is this the trigger for the rest of the 3 stops? As we can see, as he makes his way through his pit stop right now, we've got Deegan Fairclough still hunting down Reese Carroll, but Ankerson will really dictate where drivers are going to come out. As meanwhile, we look back to the battle between Caruana and Fletcher as they go on to another lap. And as they make the way in the run down towards the Dunlop chicane, it's no change between these two right now, as I think Caruana may be in two minds. Does he go for the pass, or does he wait for the opportunity? As Ankerson has come out of the pit in P12 overall, that's P11 in the Pro class, and now we believe we'll be going to the end with its current state, as meanwhile Caruana just staying very close to the back of Fletcher and trying to find a way to gain an advantage, whilst also doing that critical fuel saving as he comes roaring down towards Tetra Rouge with the Audi driver in front, of course, and Mark Fletcher trying to keep his head down and just get on with the racing. Of course, the team boss of Altitude Esports, as he comes roaring onto what is the Mulsanne Straight here for what is for them the 23rd time of asking, as they come charging on down. Right now I think Fletcher's thinking, come on Matt, just pass me, let me do some fuel saving. Well, I think Matt has got other ideas as they head down towards the first chicane, and you can see here Fletcher deciding to stay in the middle of the road here. He's not going to make it easy in the end for Caruana to find his way on for Ennis. He wants to go through on the inside, and I think in the end Mark Fletcher decided, you know what, I'm going to have a little bit of fun with this, as they make their way through that first chicane and onto the second part of the straight. But right now Caruana literally glued to his rear and not giving anything away as they make their way down towards the second chicane. You can see a little bit further back there in your picture, Oystein Hereford giving pursuit as well here, and the Ignium Motorsport driver in the Audi, who's had a difficult day with that major error at Arnage, seeing him go a full 360 degree of the way round Arnage, and as he builds up the speed once again here, he'll be trying to get into that fight for what is a P18 class with Fletcher and Caruana. But looking from these guys back up towards Deegan Fairclough, you can see how close Fairclough is getting to Reece Cow every time. He's just not deciding to go for that move. He's waiting for that opportunity, and these two have already broken away from Håkon Grebstad, but Håkon Grebstad, of course, on the two-stop strategy here, he's not running to the same pace. He's currently running in the 57s. Meanwhile, all the drivers ahead of him are running in the 54s, apart from Luke McKeown, who's running in the 53s, and that is really a sign of Grebstad being on that two-stop. And looking at our timing screens right now, Callum Reed-Garton as well, running in the 57s is the Pro-Am driver. It may be the case that he's attempting a two-stop of his own, and Tom Dadswell, meanwhile, running in the 57s. Could he be on a two-stop? We would expect that maybe a sign of a two-stop race for him as he makes his way on down. And then the drivers behind him, Fletcher and Caruana, both in the 54s, so they're both battling for a free stop, I would say. And what about one driver who we had a thought about, Jean-Louis Deschamps, who's all the way down in P8 in the Pro-Am class, P22 overall. Well, I can tell you that Jean-Louis Deschamps right now lapping in what is the 59s. Well, I would say he's on a two-stop here. He is fuel-saving. He must be fuel-saving to be running at that pace, because earlier on in the race, Deschamps was running in the 55s. He has gone for the fuel-saving approach, as right now the closest battle out on circuit is the battle for what is P4 in the Pro class between Carrot and Fairclough as they make their way on around. But Jean-Louis Deschamps just keeping his head down, I think, and trying to make that two-stop work and gain him some more places later in the race. There is a sizable gap between himself and the rest of the drivers ahead of him in class, and as we see all of our drivers making their way around right now, we're just going to bring up the screens which show you the gaps between drivers effectively within what is their classes rather than the overall timings, and give us a brief moment to do so, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll just show you that. And right now, with regards to our top 5 in what is the Pro class, we can see Luke McKeown leading by 9.6 seconds over Tom Edmunds, and then Billy Fletcher a further 17.5 seconds back, with Reece Cow 6.2 seconds off of Fletcher, and Deegan Fairclough just on the back of Reece Cow. Indeed, I can confirm once again as they go on to another lap that Reece Cow has been unable to shake off Deegan Fairclough. It would seem that these two Lamborghini Huracan drivers are almost surgically attached to one another, albeit they are just running that close and to a similar pace, I should say, as Mark Fletcher comes into the pit from what is P8 here. Matt Caruana also coming in. I mean, Matt Caruana already making his way in here, and he was quite far back, Caruana, and I think it is the case for Lamborghini Huracan driver. It's not gone his way today, and Caruana, he's coming in for that slapdash of fuel, and as he makes his way in for his first stop, and well, it's the case that with Tom Dadswell carrying on out there, I think the Altitude Esports drivers splitting their strategies, with Fletcher going for the free stop. Meanwhile, it's the case that Dadswell going for the two stop. Elsewhere in the Pro-Am class, we can see Callum Reed-Garson currently leading from Jeremy DeBova by 34.5 seconds, with Jeremy DeBova there ahead of Matthew Hodges by 9.7 seconds, and then Ben Hicks down in P4 in the Pro-Am class, giving that pursuit only 2 seconds off of Hodges, with Peter Lemkins a further 8.4 seconds behind us. Didi Vlamink is into the pits from P7 in the Pro-Am class for what is his third and final stop. Meanwhile, in the AM class, the picture here is a bit similar to what is the Pro class here, with George Bland leading at the moment, 11.7 seconds ahead of Tim Koopmans. And in terms of relative pace right now, George Bland, Tim Koopmans lapping equivalently as Bland is into the pits here. Now, we believe all, if not the majority of our AM drivers are on the free stop, so it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out as Tim Koopmans carries on around. So he will go on to take the lead of the AM class with 25 minutes to go by the time he makes his way through turn 1. And the Dutchman pressing on here. Meanwhile, Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen making his way through the Ford chicanes in P3 and giving pursuit to Koopmans. And it's the case Gamborg Rasmussen, with one major moment earlier in the race, saw his lead of the AM class drop away, and he's now trying to hunt down the lead once again. Matthew Addy in P4, Alexander Batak in P5, and that is how the standings currently sit from all of our drivers as we now look back to our overall timings. And it is the case, well, Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen's got quite a way to go if he wants to catch up to Tim Koopmans, who seems to be getting into a rhythm. And where in all of this, I hear you ask, is Matt Edmunds, our championship leader in the AM class. He's all the way down in P33 right now, and well, he's not having a good day at the races. I can tell you that this race is not going his way, as he is a long way down and currently letting the battle for what is P4 overall, P4 in the Pro class, come on through as he's down in P7. And I do think the championship lead in the AM class is going to swing after tonight, as we can see it is the case that Fairclough and Rees-Cow still nose to tail. But meanwhile, coming out of the pits, we can see Matt Caruana is on the back of Mark Fletcher as they make their way down towards the Mulsanne corner. They're on the third part of the Mulsanne straight right now, and Caruana very close to the back of Fletcher as they make their way down. And now this really is a position. But you can see Caruana giving a push there to Mark Fletcher as they come on down the straight, and as they head into the braking zone, no change. Or will Caruana swing out at the last moment? No, he decides, you know what, I'm going to tuck it in behind and not go for the move as they make their way on out the corner and now head down towards Indianapolis. Ahead of them is Jason Landry, and will Jason Landry on what is a two-stop strategy, as we believe. Of course, he had that moment earlier on in his first pit stop where he had to serve a time penalty in the pits for speeding in the pit lane, as we found out. And it is the case the Canadian driver, who's currently in P16 over what is P11 in class. Oh, how if he had not had that time penalty, how would he have shaped out? I think he would be up there in the battle, right in the middle of the top 10 right now in the Pro class, but it hasn't to be. And instead, right now, he finds himself fighting an uphill battle with two very fast Pro drivers. Of course, he's fast himself, Landry, but he's got two fast chargers behind him who will both want to find their way past Landry as soon as possible. And I wonder whether that Ferrari is going to become sunny very wide as he heads towards the end of this race, as they make their way down towards the Porsche curves once again, and as they come roaring on down. Meanwhile, a bit further down the order, I can tell you that, well, with dirt bounce in his path right now, Matthew Addy trying to get closer to the prime driver here. Of course, this will be a pass for what is track position and overall position, but not class position, as I'm hearing Matt Edmunds has had a moment at what was the Dunlop chicane. He's brought it back under control right now, but Matt Edmunds' race is going from good to bad to not the best race to have had going into the season break. As meanwhile, Kenny Herman's into the pits as I look out my commentary box window right now, and that is another third stop being activated. We'll wait to see how many more of those occur and whether we do see the mad dash into the pits, because I do reckon, based on what we saw in the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing lobby last night, lobby 2, we saw an absolute plethora of drivers literally come in with about 15 to 10 minutes to go. Will we see the same again here as we look at Oystein Hereford right now, who's P9 overall, P8 in the Pro class, just soldiering on right now and keeping his head in the game as he roars around through the corners. And as he continues to do so at this point, of course, the field having spaced out to an extent, we are just waiting for the dramatics of what is that final round of pit stops and how everybody shapes out as Kenny Hermans is coming out of the pits right now. And where is Kenny Hermans? Well, here he is. He makes his way back up to speed. I think for him, it will be the case that he's going to be safe from Jean-Louis Deschamps, who makes his way across the timeline right now. And in P6, the prime driver gaining the position on Peter Lemkins, who's going for his third stop. And this is the sign of the two-stop working for Deschamps. He was quite a way down as Peter Lemkins is only just now coming out of his pit box. That gap is going to be a sizable gap, and right now if Deschamps is able to hold on what's going to be the gap between the two of them, to give you an idea, as Lemkins comes out of the pits, that gap is going to be somewhere in the region of about 22 to 23 seconds. Well, I would say And that if Deschamps can just simply hold on and not lose more than 3 to 4 seconds a lap, he'll be safe come the end. And how many more drives can he pull that on? As meanwhile, a bit further up in the Pro-Am class, we are hearing it. It's the case that Matthew Hodges and Ben Hicks have just changed positions going into the first of the Mulsanne chicanes. And as they now make their way down towards the second one, we can see that Ben Hicks tucked in behind what is Matthew Hodges. And both of these drivers having only done 2 stops so far. Will we see them both come into the pits, or will we see one of them stay out and one go in? Or will we see them both pit? That's the big question we have to ask ourselves. I think right now, based on their relative pace, both running in the 57s, of course it's hard to gauge with the Pro-Am drivers not lapping to the same pace as our lead pro drivers, but I would say if they're doing 57s, they may be on 3 stops here as they make their way down towards what is the Mulsanne corner. You can see Hodges there just doing a small weave from the centre to the outside and back into the middle, just trying to break some of the distant toe from what is Ben Hicks. And of course he's allowed to do the occasional weave, but not too much, otherwise the stewards may give him a warning about it. And if it was very close, if Ben Hicks was all over the back of him and trying to look for the move down the inside, then that would be more of a warning into a potential penalty. But Hodges keeping it nice and clean, and as they make their way down towards Indianapolis, you can see just doing little weaves here and there once again to try and break that distant toe. But I don't think he's going to prevent the inevitable, which is when you've got 2 Ferrari 488 GT3 Evos on a straight, and it's a long straight such as the one from Mulsanne corner down towards where it's Indianapolis. It's the case that the car behind in the slipstream will gain an advantage eventually at some point as they both make their way on down into Indianapolis for what for them is the 25th time. And as they come into that braking zone, you can see how Hicks is closing back up as they now make their way into an arch corner. Heavy braking into the slowest corner on the circuit, of course, as they come on through, just keeping it nose to tail as they make their way through with 20 minutes remaining, plus the final lap, of course, the overtime from the final lap. But meanwhile, looking from them to a bit further up the road, we can see Jochen Siegert there moving out of the way from Rees Carroll and also Deegan Fairclough as they both come through. And Rees Carroll starting to make a bit of a break from Deegan Fairclough as they make their way into the Dunlop chicane once again. But I think it's the case that Deegan Fairclough may just be backing the car off and then going to be building up for another run on Rees Carroll a bit later on. The Drive Dead Racing driver here just doing everything he can to try and break away, but it's just not working out. But meanwhile, Jason Landry now finds himself in a very uncomfortable position. He has got both what is Mark Fletcher and also Matt Caruana all over the back of him, and he'll know that both Fletcher and Caruana are in a fetchy qualifying twin right now, whereas Landry, I think, is trying to go to the end on a 2-stop here. So how wide can the Canadian make that Ferrari? If he dares make it wide, well, they come out of the Corvette curves, and now it's a run down towards the Ford chicanes, and you can see here how Mark Fletcher, he's got Matt Caruana trying to look for the move, and he's tucked in behind Landry, and as they make their way into the braking zone this time, no change between the 3 of them, but literally it's the case that Mark Fletcher so close, almost tapping the back of the Ferrari that were riding on board and looking back from the gearbox of as they emerge from the Ford chicanes. On to the next lap they go, but you can see that Mark Fletcher getting closer and closer here. He's literally right there as they make the way on through in towards what is turn at number 2. And as we look to the exterior cameras here, will there be a move from Mark Fletcher? Well, I think if he's going to go for it this time, he's a bit too late on going for it on the brakes, but he won't want to go for it, I don't think, until it's the run down towards Mulsanne, as otherwise it'll be the case that Landry will be able to come back in very early. As you can see briefly, I think Caruana just carrying a bit too much momentum on the exit of 3 and almost tapping the back of Mark Fletcher, having to take a bit of evasive action and losing the rear end slightly as they make their way out to turn 7 and into turn 8. Into Tete Rouge they go once again, and Caruana right now really, I think this is not the way he wanted the race to go and is trying to find a way to get past the pair of drivers in front so he can go hunt down a potential top 5 if not a top 3 as they make their way down the straight right now. And we're in that Jeremy DeBover has had an incident, but meanwhile, whilst this is all going on, Jeremy DeBover in P2 in class, we focus on the here and now, and we can see here's the case that Jason Landry holding on to that position at this point in time, and Mark Fletcher and Matt Caruana both coming in front. I think Landry in the end, 9, that the gig was up, and as a result, he would not be able to fight that, and now he's going to tuck in behind and do some fuel saving behind the 2 fast Chargers, who now make their way down the second part of the Mulsanne straight and continue their slipstream battle for what is for them P10 in class. Now as they make their way down towards what is the second chicane here, will we see Caruana go for the move? Well, it looks as though instead he's given a little bit of a push here once again to Mark Fletcher, trying to give Mark Fletcher the hurry up, of course, and also giving him a little bit of boost down the straight. And as they make their way into the braking zone here for the second chicane, no change between these 3 other than Jason Landry being at the back and closing up under braking, but we'll wait and see how that plays out. Meanwhile, in the AM class, Alexander Batak has just completed what for him is his 3rd stop. And where is George Bland after all this? Well, George Bland right now coming across that timeline onto another lap. I think he's going to come out ahead of Batak, but he's lost out considerably considerably in terms of his advantage. And I think Bland must have had his longest stop of the three, because right now he's got to chase after what is Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen and also Stefan Tim Koopmans, and well, he is a long way back at this time as George Bland. And if Gamborg Rasmussen and also Stefan Tim Koopmans are on a two-stop, which if they are, this will be an absolute surprise, I think, to George Bland, then I think the battle for the win of the AM class right now will be going towards these two drivers. And you can see Gamborg Rasmussen only 2 seconds back right now, and I would say, given we've only got 15 minutes to go, if we do not see another pit stop from either of these two within the next 5 minutes, they are going to the end on a two-stop, or they are attempting to, and it will be an emergency stop if it's going to happen, as we're hearing that Deegan Fairclough is into the pit lane from P5. So as a result, it's Rees Cow who now will be finally released, but has he got enough in the tank to go all the way to the end, or will we see Rees Cow do a pit stop right at the end of this race? As we can see, Stefan Tim Koopmans making his way on down into Mulsanne corner right now, and Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen here, it's the case, the Dane chasing the Dutchman. Will he be able to close it down? Well, based on their relative lap times, I can tell you on that last lap, Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen was 2.5 seconds faster compared to Koopmans. But whether Koopmans have made a mistake, alternatively, whether Gamborg Rasmussen does have another stop to do very shortly, and Koopmans is on the two-stop, and Rasmussen does not know that, we will have to wait and see. But this is building up to a crescendo right now, because we have seen every driver who's been in the lead of the AM class have an incident or something go wrong for them. It's the case that the AM class lead has been toxic to the point that it is completely damaged and destroyed a driver's race, and Rasmussen is trying to get back into the lead after that incident earlier on, and Stefan Tim Koopmans right now seems to be the only driver who feels comfortable or safe in the lead of the AM class as he makes his way out of our large corner. We will wait and see, and meanwhile, whilst that is happening, of course, we've still got more pit stops happening as Deegan Fairclough is into the pits. And as he makes his way out to the pits right now, where does he emerge? Well, he emerges under his own steam. And where is Mark Fletcher? Mark Fletcher has got Matt Caruana over the back of it, and Fairclough comes out ahead of Fletcher and Caruana. It has not worked out for either of these drivers. In fact, this is a disaster for Fairclough and Fletcher. Not Fairclough and Fletcher, Fletcher and Caruana, I should say, because Fairclough has come out ahead and effectively jumped them through the pit stops. And meanwhile, Jakob Boschov is now into the pits from what was P5 in the Pro-Am class. And we'll have to wait and see whether Jean-Louis Deschamps gains another place. We've got a car off. That's Deegan Fairclough, surely. That is Deegan Fairclough into the wall. I think he's just completely lost it under braking there into turn number 6, and the car just speared itself into the tyre wall, and after what was a good pit stop, it's all gone horribly wrong as he makes his way on through. But I can see one driver who it's not going wrong for, and that's Jean-Louis Deschamps right now, who's now in P5 in the Pro-Am class. And where's Jakob Boschov as he comes after the pits? You can see he's just come out of the pits and he's in P6, and he's got a gap of what is 14 seconds to close down versus Jean-Louis Deschamps here. The Ignium Motorsport Spark driver now has to go all the way to the end as they make their way around onto what is the closing laps of this race. We've got less than 15 minutes to go, and we've still got a lot of drivers who I think are due to take a third pit stop. It's not over yet, ladies and gentlemen. There is still racing and still strategy to come, and we'll wait to see if Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen has taken a pit stop. He has come into the pits whilst we were looking further up the field. He has made a pit stop. And right now, Stefan Tim Koopmans has two options. He can choose to pit and cover off Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen at the end of this lap. Or if he is on the two-stop, he now just needs to nurse the car to the win, because he has such an advantage now. And there are only effectively, we would predict, based on the leaders coming up towards the end of their current lap and going on to lap number 28 very shortly, we believe there are only 3 more laps to go for our leaders. Indeed, for Koopmans, 4 more laps to go. So because he's effectively down a lap on the leaders, albeit the leaders have just come across that timeline. Koopmans is still on the previous lap. So as a result, if Koopmans can keep this together right now, he will definitely be coming home as the leader of the AM class. This is incredible, because the Dutchman, who we didn't really see too much of earlier on, is now finding his way to bring this race back, and Koopmans seems to be the master of the feature races in the AM class, as we see McKee out into the pits, Tom Edmunds in as well. Now we are seeing the final stops of our pro drivers. It is going to be the mad dash into the pits. We see Billy Fletcher in as well. What about Rees Cow? Will we see the Drive Dead racing driver coming in? He does come in as he makes his way on into the pits, but our top 4 in the pro class spaced out quite considerably, so these should all be stops which do not see a major change of position. Meanwhile, Håkon Grebstad coming into the pits. No, he decides not to. There a little bit of a jink into the pits, and I'm wondering whether that's to try and trick some drivers behind to go into the pits instead, as Luke McCown has now come out of the pits and goes racing once again in the lead of this race. And Håkon Grebstad at this point, well, Tom Edmunds is just emerging from the pit lane right now, and Håkon Grebstad is coming on through to take second place. Now, how much of an advantage will he have over Edmunds? This is absolutely incredible. Grebstad is just jumping up the order right now, and we can see that Tom Edmunds has come out the best part of what is 4.5 seconds down on Grebstad, and with only for these guys what is 3 laps to go, well, if Grebstad can keep this together and really nail it right now, will Edmunds be there at the end to take him on, as we're hearing that Rhys Carroll was also into the pits. And as he makes his way out right now, Anders Ankerson is ahead, and Anders Ankerson has got ahead after doing his third stop much earlier, so he's jumped him on an undercut. And well, we can see that Billy Fletcher just further up the road as well, but Rhys Carroll is now in P7 and going racing once again. Will Tom Dadswell from P4 pit? However, that's the question we still had. And also Håkon Grebstad, who we do understand is on a 2-stop. And meanwhile, looking further down the order, we've now got the mad dash into the pits for what is our prime drivers. Well, Ben Hicks stays out, but then we can see Jeremy DeBover into the pits. We've also got Matthew Hodges into the pits. They're both there, and these two are moving towards battling for position as we wait for them to both come out the pits. Further back, we've got Jean-Louis Deschamps, who carries on his way around, and meanwhile we can see Jeremy DeBover and Matthew Hodges both leave their pit boxes at the same time, and as they make their way on down the pit lane right now and head down towards what is turn number 1, it is DeBover just ahead of Matthew Hodges. And as we ride on board right now, he'll be swearing with Matthew Hodges, saying why can't that pit limiter go off, as he makes his way out of pits. Both of them do, but Matthew Hodges is now behind Jeremy DeBover by what is the best part of only a second. And can he get back into P3 in the prime class come the checkered flag? There's only for these guys 3 more laps to go, and now it is a sprint for these two. It is a sprint to the death as they make their way down through turn number 5, and then we ride on board with Matthew Hodges as he gets back up to speed. And of course both drivers will know they are on cold tyres right now. They cannot push too hard, but they'll need to push every single inch they've got out of that car, because for them it is the case that right now they will both want to be on that podium. They will both feel that they deserve it, and as they make their way charged on through, remember Ben Hicks is yet to take a third stop. If he is on the 3 stop, Ben Hicks, he will come out into this battle as well, so they both got to push to try and undercut Ben Hicks' potential of a third stop as they make their way roaring down the straight, down the Mulsanne, down towards the first chicane, and you can see already Hodges getting much closer here versus Jeremy DeBover. And I think it may be the case that DeBover has decided, you know what, it's going to happen eventually. Hodges is going to close up, so I'm going to let him close up. As Tim Koopmans has come into the pits, I should tell you, ladies and gentlemen, so we are just going to look away from this battle, and Tim Koopmans comes out of the pits. Where is Gamble Rasmussen? Well, the gap between the two of them, and Koopmans has covered off Gamble Rasmussen on the 3 stop or a 3 stop of his own, and the gap is as it was previously. It has not changed. In fact, it's opened up now to 3.9 seconds as they make the one through. In fact, it's 4.2 as they come charging down towards what is Tetra Rouge. As they make the way on down, it is the case that Rasmussen now needs to put in everything he's got to try and close down Koopmans, as Koopmans right now is trying to make this win a reality as he makes his way out of Tetra Rouge here, and both drivers will be on the limit of what they can do. Meanwhile, further up the road, I can tell you that Matt Caruana is trying to go around the outside of what is Mark Fletcher in the run down towards Indianapolis, and as he does here, he holds the position into the braking zone. You can see that I was going to say into the braking zone, they're a little bit presumptuous of me, my apologies. It is the case that right now Mark Fletcher right on the back of Caruana as they do make their way into the braking zone for Indianapolis. Now we got it right, and it is the case that Caruana gains the position for the time being as they now exit. Both drivers, they're running wide, but particularly Mark Fletcher deciding to kick up a lot of dust and then some as they make their way into our large corner using the full track width. They are both going hunting now. They've got a long way to go to Rhys Carroll, however, who is the best part of what is almost 25 seconds up the road. In fact, almost 30 seconds up the road, as we can see now Caruana really battling for what is P8 in class. That's the best he's going to get today, and I think he just wants to break away from Mark Fletcher behind, but I think Fletcher has got other ideas here as they make their way on through. And with this in mind, Billy Fletcher right now will close down the deficit to what is a Matt Caruana in the Pro Championship, and this is only going to tighten things at the top. But given the fact that both of the championship leaders are Billy Fletcher and also Matt Caruana are not having the best of finishes, Håkon Grebstad right now, you would imagine on this 2-stop, and he's got a 3.3 second advantage over what is Tom Edmunds, which is being reeled down, but not a fast enough rate here. Right now, Grebstad, if he pulls this P2 off, he's going to be right there in amongst Billy Fletcher and also Matt Caruana going into round number 7. And we are really looking at right now a contender coming alive in the battle for the championship lead. Luke McKeown as well. Of course, he joined this championship a bit later as Ben Hicks is into the pit lane from what was P2 of the Prime class. We'll talk about the Pro Championship a bit later because now this is big for Ben Hicks, because where is Matthew Hodges? Well, Matthew Hodges right now battling with Jeremy DeBoer. They make their way down towards what is the forward chicanes. Ben Hicks will have a very short stop, of course, as they make the way on through. They've only got 2 more laps to go after this one, and Ben Hicks already leaving the pit lane as he makes his way out. Where is Matthew Hodges? Where is Jeremy DeBoer? They're making their way out to the forward chicane right now. We look back to Ben Hicks as he makes his way on through, and you can see Ben Hicks has crossed the pit exit line. He's getting back up to speed, and Matthew Hodges here. It's not enough for Hodges. All turns to Jeremy DeBoer, but they're going to be so close as they make their way up in towards the forward chicanes. It's a freeway battle for P2 in the Prime class, and it's coming alive literally with 2 laps to go as they go roaring out and down through Dunlop chicane and down towards Tetra Rouge. And it is Matthew Hodges who is 1.7 seconds behind Ben Hicks, and Jeremy DeBoer who's only a further 7/10 of a second back. Now the question is, will Hodges and DeBoer be able to put their differences aside just for a brief moment and try to catch up to Ben Hicks with 2 laps to go, already 1.5 laps to go by the time of the end of the Mulsanne Straight? Or will the battle for P3 instead intensify and give Ben Hicks the opportunity to run away? That is the big question as they make their way down to the Mulsanne Straight once again. My goodness, it is all coming alive right in the final hour. Meanwhile, as they make their way down on the straight, I can tell you that in the battle between Steven Tim Koopmans and Steven Gamborg Rasmussen, that gap is still 4.2 seconds. Koopmans is holding on to the lead comfortably in the AM class right now, and meanwhile the leader of what is the Pro class, Luke McKeown, is 17.5 seconds ahead of Håkon Grebstad, who is being reeled in as Jeremy DeBoer. I think it's got it wrong, DeBoer, it's in the wall. DeBoer has hit the wall there. It's only a graze, it's not major damage, but my goodness, and look who that is in the rear of the picture right now. That's Jean-Louis Deschamps in P5, who on the 2 stop, well, he's got enough of an advantage over Jakob Boschoff, an advantage of what is 12 seconds. He doesn't have to worry about being reeled in with 2 laps to go, but Jeremy DeBoer is the first one to crack in the hunt for P2. So right now, Jeremy DeBoer has either got to try and pull a lap out of nowhere to recover this, alternatively Matthew Hodges and Ben Hicks have to go fighting. That will be what DeBoer is hoping. He will be praying that the CXR Project Black driver Hodges hunts down and closes up to and battles furiously with Ben Hicks from Ignium Motorsport Blaze, because right now otherwise the Briton here in P2 in the Prime class, P15 overall, is going to hold on to this at the very end, and it will be an absolutely colossal P2 as he makes his way out of what is Mulsanne corner. But you can see Hodges is close and he's inching closer each and every corner. Hodges has got it in his blood right now. He can feel the adrenaline pumping, there's no doubt, and he wants that P2. It would be a huge result for CXR Project Black as they make their way charging down towards what is Indianapolis. A long way to go. But as they come on down right now, it is the situation, I can tell you, that as our leader has gone on to what is the final lap of this race, Luke McKeown still leading now by 18.5 seconds. We can see that Håkon Grebstad making his way through the Dunlop chicane. In the rear of your picture, we can see Tom Edmunds, who now gets the spotlight on him as he makes his way out of turn 3. Edmunds is closing down Grebstad, but not enough. It's not enough from Edmunds. That last lap, he was only 0.3 of a second faster. Grebstad is pulling a blinder here with the 2 stop, and whilst it's not going to be the win, it is going to feel like a win if this works out, because Grebstad has jumped all the way from the mid-pack of the Pro class to P2 on the 2 stop here, with most going for the 3 stop. It is the case that the fuel saving is working out for the McLaren driver as he goes roaring down the Mulsanne one final time. But of course, remember, he will have to short shift that car unless he's got enough fuel to do 1 full power lap. Meanwhile, behind him, Edmunds will close with each and every inch of the straight and through each and every corner as they make their way on down. Meanwhile, I can tell you that Ben Hicks versus Matthew Hodges, well, if it is the case that Hodges is going to close up, he's doing it late in the day, as we're hearing that Deegan Fairclough has had a moment off circuit. And you can see, in fact, there we've got the tyre marks there on the exit of the forward chicanes. And I think Deegan Fairclough has gone for a spin on the final corner. Kenny Herrimans now will see him in his sights and try to hunt down what is P12 in the Pro class on the final lap. But as they make their way on through right now, they're running out of time of day. And all these battles really are not coming together for a number of drivers. But I can tell you that Steven Tim Koopmans, he has opened up that lead in the AM class. He's now 5.6 seconds ahead of Steven Gamborg Rasmussen, who we see coming out of Arnage corner. And he's continuing that pursuit. But it's fading away. The win is fading off into the distance. I think at this point he'll be looking at that P2 as Robert Dasunik is into the pit. One last time from P20 overall, and that is for what we believe is his 4th stop of the night. As meanwhile, we look further up the road and we see Mark Fletcher continuing to chase what is Matt Caruana here and staying with him until the very end as they make their way on through what is the first of the 2 chicanes down Mols. And as Matt Edmunds has jumped to the pit, Matt Edmunds has called time, I think, and the best he will do today is P7 in the AM class, and that is a disaster for Matt Edmunds as he's come on in. And meanwhile, you can see here soldiering on in what is P31 overall, P6 in the AM class, keeping his head down as the Next Gen Racing orange driver. But we look from him right now to the battle, which I think is only going one way, as we can see that Håkon Grebstad in P2. Tom Edmunds is closing with each and every corner, each and every metre of this circuit, but he's just not got enough time. Surely the gap has come down sizably. It's come down by over a second so far in this lap, even more than that in fact, as Edmunds is literally attacking with absolute fever. We ride on board here with the RD Sim Sport driver as he comes roaring into a large, but as he makes his way out, you can see Grebstad there, he's getting closer, but Edmunds is pushing it so much right now, and this must be frustrating. He would be praying for another lap, but that's not what he's going to get. This is the last lap. They are only going to do 30 laps at Le Mans, not 31. And as we can see here, Edmunds just losing out gradually, as meanwhile we have to look from them to our leader in the Pro class, who as he makes his way up towards the Ford chicanes, he's come from the midfield of the Pro class. He got into the lead, he took the longer opening pit stop of everybody, and he fought his way back through into the lead, and in the end he's worked this to a masterclass. And as he comes through the final corner, it is Luke McKeown from Logitech G Autos Esports who takes the win at Le Mans in the Pro class, and overall with a fantastic drive as he crosses the line there, and his championship campaign continues to grow. As meanwhile, after what has been a long chase, and as he makes his way through the final 2 corners, only 2 to go for the Ignium Motorsport driver, he's done it. He's made the 2-stop show, and as he comes across the line, it's Håkon Grebstad who takes P2 as the Norwegian crosses the line ahead of Tom Edmunds, who just needed one more lap, and behind them another 2-stopper in the form of Tom Dadswell, who made the 2-stop work to come home in P4. A brilliant drive from those guys, and then Billy Fletcher completes the top 5 in the Pro class as he comes across the timeline. Then it's Anders Ankersen in P6, followed by Reese Carroll in P7 as they make their way across. And then it will be Callum Reed-Garton who, as he comes on through the final sequence of corners that goes into the Ford chicanes, well, what can we say about the Luxim 24 of MV Esports driver? Well, I think he does all the talking with the BMW M4 and circuit, ladies and gentlemen. He's come from the back of the prime field, and having sifted his way on through and kept it smart in the strategy, he comes across the line, the winner of the prime class at Le Mans by a sizable margin. And another brilliant drive. It wasn't faultless this time. He had a mistake at the Porsche curves, but it wasn't a mistake which cost him. As we see coming out the final corner here, it looks as though Mark Fletcher has just got ahead of Matt Caruana. So it's Mark Fletcher who takes P9 in the end over Matt Caruana, and then Oystein Hereford behind. And well, the replay has stopped there, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen. But what I can tell you is that Ben Hicks in the end has come home in P2 in the Prime class ahead of Matthew Hodges. A brilliant battle between those two, and Jeremy Debova and Jean-Louis Deschamps in the end completing the top 5, with Deschamps completing the race on a 2-stop, and Jakob Boschoff finishing in what was P6 ahead of Peter Lemkins, Deirdre de Vlaming, and also a bit further down, Dirk Bounce there having a difficult day at the races, and Lucas Romano retiring on the final lap in the end, finishing all the way down in P10 at P30 overall. And then your winner, ladies and gentlemen, although we would have loved to have seen him cross the line, we didn't get to, but your winner, he held off Stefan Gamberg Rasmussen in the end. It is the case that Stefan Tim Koopmans came home the winner of the AM class by a margin of what was just over 7.5 seconds. An absolutely faultless drive on the free stop versus Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, and these two inseparable in terms of their battle, but in the end Gamborg Rasmussen with a critical error earlier in the race costing him the win, and Alexander Batak rounding off the podium in the AM class ahead of George Bland and also Matthew Addy here in P5. Well, my goodness, what a race. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back in preparation for our post-race interviews with our race winners. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we'll get our post-race interviews underway of our race winners. Now, I should point out with regards to Stefan Tim Koopmans, he's unavailable to join us for a post-race interview tonight, but he did privately message me his thoughts going into this interview period. So he's messaged me whilst we were broadcasting the race, and well, here are his thoughts which he would like me to read out. But before all of that, I would just like to also give you an update. Some of you may recall that in the previous round, within round number 5, that Stefan Tim Koopmans was saying about how he went into the race quite psychologically on edge and concerned about his father with regards to the situation out in what is the Philippines with the typhoon that's currently hitting the region, or has been hitting the region. I believe it may have subsided to a degree right now, and that he was very concerned because his father is out in that region. Well, I'm very pleased to say that as I understand it, and as Stefan Tim Koopmans understand it, he's been in contact with his father, indeed the family out there, and that his father is doing okay. He's doing the best he can given the situation out there. So Koopmans is in a happy place right now, and he's at much more ease. And I think that has translated into his race right now, given the fact that he's had a positive bit of news going into the race, and now, well, he's had a positive race. And here is his debrief of this race. He had a great start, given that he picked up four times in terms of an instant count during the parade lap due to everybody clocking up in the Anfield. We did see the Anfield really back up at the start of the race and really take their time going racing, and as a result, Koopmans picked up 4 instant points going into the start of the race. And after the first lap, he managed to get himself 2 black flags as well, which only added to things, and ended up in last place. And then as a result, well, it only got worse from there in the fact that in his first pit stop, he changed all 4 tyres and immediately forgot they were cold and spun out whilst trying to avoid hitting the wall. And he didn't hit the wall as he came out the pit, so he went on his way, and after that it was all smooth sailing. So he's had a very difficult start to his race at Le Mans, but after that it was smooth sailing in the fact he gained back all the positions in class and saw many drivers drop out of the race. Remember what I was saying over the course of the race, it seemed as though the lead was plagued or poisoned and nobody in the end could hold on to the lead for more than 5 minutes. Well, it seems as though Stefan Tim Koopmans was able to hold on to the lead for a sizable amount of time, and whilst during the session he did lose some focus here and there and had black flags, particularly for track limits, it was not enough to lose serious position. And when he was driving alone, and until Stefan Rasmussen really closed up, he could feel that driving alone was really taking its toll because he didn't have anybody to put that pressure on, and that can catch some drivers out in these longer races. But the adrenaline got pumping again when he could see Rasmussen closing up to him, and as a result, he was back into the race and doing faster and faster lap times. And he says props to Stefan Rasmussen, who kept him going and really put the pressure on right at the end. And really towards the end of the race, the time went by so quick that I think when he crossed the checkered flag, he had to pinch himself to know that he'd won, and it really surprised him in the end that he took the win with his subtle mistakes and the black flags. It feels as though it was quite unreasonable and unreal, but he's had a blast and indeed working as hard as possible and having some brilliant battles into corners and outbreaking a good number of drivers. And he had a great fight with Navarro de Bova as well, who defended hard, and they almost came together, but nice racing with Navarro, and well, he's absolutely enjoying the racing with Navarro de Bova and looks forward to further racing with him. And with regards to a quick summary of his season so far, his first half of the season, well, this is his very first iRacing League experience, and it has been absolutely fantastic, and he's looking forward to round 7 in 2 weeks' time at the Red Bull Ring. It's a relatively straightforward track, and as a Dutchman who obviously supports Max Verstappen of Red Bull, he feels the need to win at the Red Bull Ring circuit. Well, we look forward to seeing Stefan Tim Koopmans come back in 2 weeks' time. And the last message he wanted us to pass on is that he wishes both myself and also everybody tuning in, all the fans and all the other drivers, the best of health and happy holidays. A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you too, Stefan, when you do watch this back. But meanwhile, looking at our other drivers within the class, we're just going to check in with regards to whether we've got either our Pro-Am winner or our Pro winner available for interview, but it would seem as though both of them are not available at this time, so we're not going to be hearing from Callum Regarton. I'm just double checking to make sure they haven't sent me anything in private. Well, they have not, either of them, so as a result, I do believe we are only going to get the one set of thoughts tonight, which does happen, of course, and they might have private things to take care of, which is completely understandable in their personal schedules, but we're not going to hear from either Callum Regarton or alternatively Luke McKeown. Of course, whilst we're winding down and wrapping up the show, if they do message us in the meantime time, we'll quickly cut back to doing an interview with them. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, I think it is really the case that with both of them picking up wins, McKeown right now, his championship charge continues. And for Callum Regarton, it's the case that his championship advantage only now extends. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. And if you have enjoyed tonight and you want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, why not check us out, our official Next Gen Racing website, that's nextgenracing.co.uk, alternatively the official Next Gen Racing Facebook group, that's facebook.com/groups/Next Gen Racing. Also, a big thank you to our partners, without whom it would not be possible to run Lobby 1, and that is Apex Racing Academy. You can see their web address there once again. Indeed, strongly recommend Apex Racing Academy if you are looking to improve your iRacing performance. And indeed, we've got another message from Apex Racing Academy just before we go. Well, with that message from Apex Racing Academy, we now look forward to the future. Next time, we'll be taken to the Red Bull Ring, the Spielberg circuit in Austria for round number 7. And we'll be back after the Christmas break in 2 weeks' time on Wednesday, the 5th of January 2022. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Lobby 1, the Apex Racing Academy lobby, will be returning to the live broadcast on Wednesday night. And that is because by then we hope to have upgraded the broadcasting equipment and we'll be able to bring you the racing action from Lobby 1 with the much more clustered field in terms of the volume of cars, but by no means having a greater number of cars means better racing action. It is the case that both lobbies full of fantastic drivers through and through, but we will be bringing Lobby 1 back to that premier slot on the Wednesdays, or at least that is the target. And as we look ahead to next time, where it will be the case that our drivers take to the Austrian circuit, which is a very different circuit from Le Mans, its focus being about its extended straights and also its heavy braking zones, whether it be into turn 1, as we see right now, we've got Håkon Grebstad just giving us a demonstration from outside, and we'll be riding on board with the McLaren MP4 12C driver, and he'll take us around for a reference lap in 2 weeks' time. It is the case that this circuit presents a major opportunity for some drivers to gain from a circuit which is quite conventional in its nature, and it's all about getting a good exit out of each and every corner and then having all the audacity to be braver on the brakes than the guy you're battling with. And well, how will it all go down, given that our championships right now seem to be turning top to table, particularly in the Pro class and also the AM class. The Pro Am Callum Regarton extending his lead, but in the Pro class, the lead and advantage of Matt Caruana and Billy Fletcher being reeled in considerably. And this man, one of the drivers who's gained the most out of Le Mans, we'll have to wait and see how that happens in the Pro class. And the same in the AM class. With Matt Edmunds in the end only managing P7 at Le Mans, he will now be under threat, and indeed he will lose the championship lead as we understand it to Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen. And Stefan Tim Koopmans will also be right there with the two of them. We've got three-way fights open up into the championship, if not more, and well, we'll have to see how it all plays out in 2 weeks' time. But until then, from all of us at Next Gen Racing, we wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We have been Next Gen Racing. I have been Paul TX141 Walsh, and until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to have happy holidays and stay on track. Good night.